Hello Guild Wars 2 gamers, Mukluk here, and today is Friday, July 25th, and we've got a bit of Guild Wars 2 news of sorts. Some of you may have already watched this, but for those who haven't, or they wanted my take on it or something like that, Guild Wars 2 main channel did a broadcast today on their main Twitch channel, I should say, where they were showcasing these three specs that you've got right here. Excuse me, I just finished dinner. That is the Troubadour, or the Bard, the Luminary, and the Galeshot. So these three specs, they're going to showcase some information about how they work, hopefully get us hype, stuff like that, and show you more of like what we're getting in the upcoming Visions of Eternity expansion. If you've been under a rock and haven't seen the recent news videos, this week, Wednesday we got a blog post, Friday we're getting this preview, next week, Wednesday blog post on 3 more classes, Friday the preview of those classes, and then third week in a row, Wednesday, the most unloved 3 classes get their blog post, and then that Friday, the most unloved 3 classes get their preview. So, we are going to watch this. I am usually someone who watches stuff in 2x speed. I'm going to do 1.5. I'm going to meet you guys in the middle, because some of you can't handle that. You're weak. And some of you watch this in 2x speed, so if you're watching me in the future on 2x speed while I watch this in increased speed, buckle up. Now, I have been told by many that the audio on this recording is immaculate. So, prepare your ears for some very juicy goodness. One great thing about watching this in the future, I can fast forward through the 15 minutes of their setup sequence. So, here we go. Jump ahead, jump ahead, jump ahead, jump ahead, jump ahead, jump ahead, jump ahead.
I guess 3 Elite Specialization preview streams for Visions of Eternity. I am Cal Cohen, joined by Taylor Brooks.
Hello.
Some nicknames that no one really cares about.
Why is he inside a beach ball?
But they're on screen if you choose to read them. How's it going, Taylor? Excited?
Going pretty well. Have 3.
Jeez. Wow, y'all weren't kidding. Okay, so I was warned ahead of time, so I was like keeping it on the low end. But yeah, so like he talks first, and I'm guessing a lot of people crank up their volume because they're like, wow, he's really quiet. And then he talks and blows you out of your chair. All right. Okay.
Super cool. Elite Spec to show off everyone. Super excited to, display what we've been working on the past bit of time.
Not your audio, that's for sure.
I do.
For anyone, a bit of history. The last time we had Elite Specialization previews was for End of Dragon.
Volume! Loud! Turn off your mic! Taylor, too dank! Ah!
I sat on a stream coughing and drinking water for like 2 hours as I was talking about Elite Specializations. And hopefully we can get some good water screenshots in this stream as well. But we are going to kick things off today with the Troubadour, Luminary, and the Galeshot. Obviously, we had a little teaser video earlier.
I want to be very clear. As soon as they fix the audio issue, which I'm told happens a little bit into this stream, I'm going to crank it up so we can all hear it better.
This week we had a bit of an intro blog that went over some of the high-level ideas, high-level mechanics, some of the lore as well. Today we're going to be covering everything about all the specs. You're going to see all the skills. You're going to see all the traits. You're going to have developers explain some of the thought processes behind those skills and traits. And we're going to do this the next few weeks until we've covered all 9 Elite specs, setting up for the beta event where you guys are going to be able to get your hands on these. All 9 specs will be playable for about a week, and make sure there's plenty of time to check everything out, try everything out. Because I guess the big thing to keep in mind here, and even as we're talking and showing stuff on stream, is that these are still getting ready for beta. There's a lot of balance work that's still being done internally ahead of the beta, so some numbers might look a little weird, a little too low, a little too high. That's totally expected at this point. Even for the beta, we're not going to land perfectly. We've obviously seen some pretty crazy numbers on betas for some of the weapons in the past, elite specs in the past. The big goal is that we're going to get everything in a playable state, get players get all your hands on it, give us a ton of feedback, and we're going to
look at that AAA background.
Yeah. Important pieces
the fog,
launch expansion.
That blur.
Anything you want to add, Taylor, before we just hop right in?
Yeah, I'm sure. As with all the betas, like we said, all the art, audio.
Did you get louder?
Still up in flux. All the numbers you see here are probably the numbers that make it to when the beta happens. So everything you see here, just focusing on the effects. We got a lot of cool art still, again.
The chat!
Taylor's loud. Let me see if I can turn Taylor down a little bit real quick.
I'm going to be yapping a lot. So.
Okay, let's just do some quick audio checks, because we did an audio check, but
no, you didn't!
I guess the best way.
What do you mean you did an audio check?
Yeah, that's a good audio level.
There's no way I believe you did an audio check. Unless some guy just was like, yeah, it's fine.
Let's see if anyone...
Yeah, I can do some improv speaking. I'm totally good at that.
Okay.
Is this better, guys? Please say yes. If it's fan favorite, wanted to fully see. And this kind of archetype has had
Kicking things off with the...
Okay, I was skipping ahead, hoping that they fixed it, but even by 14 minutes, it's not.
Almost had the wrong word.
Okay, what is this? Alright, so this is the Troubadour, apparently. We're on a Mesmer now.
Where
the Troubadour.
What do we have going on here, Taylor?
So the Troubadour is going to be the elite spec for Mesmer in Visions of Eternity.
Dude, the rain in game is louder than CMC.
And this kind of archetype has had a long history in this game. You know, starting even from when Mesmer was initially revealed and asked for a
Dude, he just opened the volume settings. He could have turned the background sound
long
off.
time. So it's kind of like one of the reasons we wanted to go with it is it's fan favorite. Wanted to fully see it realized in game. And now talking about the Troubadour, what it's going to do is going to be a more support-focused archetype. But it's
Hold on. Wait till Trig starts explaining stuff and then need to restart. Wait, do they when they fix the audio, do they restart like talking? Hang on.
Right, we have a lot more talking to go, so I'm glad that's fixed.
Okay, we are so back. You want to give that spiel again, Taylor? Tell me about the Troubadour.
The Troubadour. Let's see. Talked about how its gameplay loop's going to be a bit longer and have a more sustained presence in normal Mesmer. And then Chronomancer was kind of the de facto support. We're going to be kind of shifting where some things live onto the Troubadour. We'll get into that a bit more later, so that Chronomancer can kind of regain its old identity, and Troubadour can kind of step in. So a lot of the ways it supports allies are more intentional and can hopefully lead to better gameplay.
What was Chrono's old
but then
identity?
The first thing, we can zoom in.
Chrono
think,
jail?
Looking at the UI is the first thing you'll notice. Talked about notes. They're going to fill up at the bottom bar there. Again, there are no clones. Some of the reasons, we had multiple reasons for doing this. The first one was just that we wanted kind of people to focus more on keeping their
Turn them up.
in
It's
that
max.
gameplay loop, interacting with Crescendo, rather than having to worry about the clones being killed. And managing them, stuff like that. Also, in some game modes like Worldly World, when it gets larger scale, we want support Mesmer to definitely function, and we saw that when you're playing a Chronomancer that has clones, a lot of the time you can't depend on getting a high shatter count. So we want to make sure that this spec feels good to play, you're not fighting your mechanic, and it just does what you want. But going from the notes, like I said, they fuel the instruments. It's going to be a bit different from normal shatters. Normal shatters, they basically scale however many clones you have. Like you can do a mind rack with all 3 clones, it's going to do a lot more damage than 1. Instruments are going to be a bit different. When you play an instrument, it's going to be an initial effect, and this initial effect is constant. It's going to be the same whether you have 0 notes.
So real quick, I'm noticing right now what he's using is Staff 2, which teleports you backward and then like leaves a clone, but he's just doing it, it seems, to just fill up the music notes, I believe.
Or 3 notes. And what's going to be different is that
reverberating loot. Perform with your loot, sending out damaging sound waves. The loot will then hold on a sec. What quality is this? Defaulted to 720p is the source?
when you use
They didn't even stream in 1080p? You have like 200 employed. I'm sorry.
those bonuses.
Perform with your loot, sending out damaging sound waves. The loot will then consume all notes to continue playing in the background. The loot's duration is extended for each note consumed. Damage, damage, damage. Each loot playing is 4% heal increase to others, plus 4% damage, plus 4% condi damage, and plus 5% to all stats. They actually made a separate boon? Not even boon, buff. I'm shocked by this. Because this is a not boon buff, it can't be corrupted, it can't be removed, it stacks with everything, and they just, not too long ago, removed Warrior Banners and Ranger Spirits from the game, and now they're adding something like that back in? Now, is that self-only or for the whole party, that buff?
This is like I talked about, and the duration in which it does that is scaling based on the notes. So you want to build up notes so that your loot is there for longer. And basically, more notes will have better bonuses so that you have bigger windows to do things like strike the crescendo or use some of the utilities I'll get into.
Yeah,
Self-only?
notably, it still counts to 3. They're just in groups of 2 notes. So you get 3, still have a total of 3 here.
Right.
But there are 6 things that are filled.
I believe the notes are actually on a scale and do play a little tune. If those who are musically inclined want to look into that, then that would be pretty cool. But,
Okay.
the note, it's three notes, like 3 clones. We wanted that kind of be similar to.
Okay, right now, the fact that they're having to explain, they're like, yeah, we did a picture that has 6 pips and it's actually 4 notes, but we want this to represent 3 notes. All right there already, change it. Like, if this is going to confuse people and they need to hear this explanation beforehand, just change it. Just take one of those middle ones out so that there's 3 separate distinct things. Just
Normal Mesmer.
All right, should we hop into some skills?
Yes, we can look at the skills.
I'm just going to start pressing buttons. Let's
Yeah,
press
so
the first
talking
one.
about
What's
loot,
going on here?
First one, you're going to whip out the loot and do 3 waves. All the instruments are kind of replacements like normal shatters. So this one's going to be the mind rack. It's going to be the more damaging one.
hang on a sec.
When you do it,
let me
if
go
you have
back
no
to
target,
this.
these waves will just go out in front of you, but you can use a target to kind of lock onto them. So this is just your damaging skill, your mind rack equivalent that you can see here that there are some baseline bonuses for that loot. We'll get into more. A lot of them are going to come from traits. So pretty simple skill. It's going to be the one you're pressing often. And then we can move on to the flute.
Let's say
I am
CMC.
going to be doing a lot of cheating on this stream, so no.
Okay, second skill. Flustering Flute. Plays an enchanting tune with the flute, confusing enemies in front of you. Enemies in the center of the music will be dazed. The flute will then consume all notes to continue playing in the background. The flute's duration is extended for each note consumed. Does damage, does confusion. Flute playing is plus 5% to all stats, 4% increase healing to others, plus 4% damage, plus 4% condi damage. Chaos Aura, center days for 1 second. Okay.
No cooldowns are active, but you can see on skill facts and build tips that there are real cooldowns on these skills. But yeah, tell me about the flute.
The flute, that's going to be kind of your Cry of Frustration equivalent. You're going to fluster your enemies with a note from your flute. It's going to do a wave in front of you, confusing people. And it's also going to have a sweet spot in the middle, where it's like, you know, middle of the hitbox, if you hit them, you're also going to get a short daze, kind of interrupt. We wanted to give the skill a bit more utility. A lot of the time, the Cry of Frustration equivalents aren't useful in a lot of the builds. So I wanted to give it something a little extra that, you know, even supports want to use it, even, you know, power DPS wants to use it. So it should be a pretty good skill. And then we can move on to the drum, the deafening drum.
They did get a drum. I talked about the possibility. Okay, because I pulled inspiration from Black Desert Online, I said they're going to get a string instrument, a flute, and a bongo drum. And then when we saw the lute and the harp, I was like, oh, no bongo drum. And now we're back to the drum. Slam the drum to release a percussive shockwave, disabling enemies. The strength of the disable increases the closer an enemy is. The drum will then consume notes to continue playing, blah, blah, blah. Drum playing, 5% increase to all stats, 4% increase healing to others, 4% damage, 4% condi damage. Okay, so each of these musical buffs seem to all be the same thing. 5% to all stats, 4% more healing, damage, and condi damage. Medium range stun, 2 seconds. Long range daze, 1 second. Close range stun, 2 seconds. Oh, wait, sorry. It's a close range stun, then medium range daze, then long range daze. So the closer you are to the target, the nastier the CC is.
The diversion, the CC skill, you're going to slam the drum, do a wave out, and the wave will have kind of scaling effects based on how close the enemy was from you. So you want to be pretty close.
The drum looks like a tambourine almost.
At the close range, you're going to stun them, and a bit farther out, it's going to lessen into a daze, and at the last range, that daze is going to taper
Hey, Fandrel, thank you for the raid, dude. We're watching the broadcast from earlier.
off into just a lesser duration.
I'm sure you already saw this.
The CC skill, you're going to get value out of this kit that, you know, all Mesmers have, and then we can move on to the harp.
Strum the harp, rejuvenating allies in a burst of healing. The tune reverberates, creating a healing area for a short duration, then consumes all notes to blah, 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 same thing as the others. Does a heal, pulse healing, harp playing, and distortion.
So the harp is going to be, the harmonious harp is going to be your healing skill. The first thing you can notice is that it does not just give distortion baseline. I think Cal has,
I have some traits on.
Cal has a trait on, we'll get to that, but the skill baseline doesn't provide distortion. We wanted this spec to, instead of having a high cooldown invuln like a lot of Mesmer specs have, we wanted to do it lower cooldown, more sustain that you see from a lot of supports. So it's going to, you know, when you use it, do a burst healing, and then over time just do
400 heal per second for 4 seconds is pretty bad. I'm kind of hoping that this character doesn't have gear on right now, because he's on a test character, and he's done streams like this where the test character had no equipment before. I was kind of expecting it to be like Overload Water for Tempest, so that even if you're not in great healing gear, it is a decent heal. This would be like, if you're a DPS, hitting this button feels like it would be like not even worth it. Okay, continue.
some more pulse healing. This is going to, again, low cooldown, healing your allies, what you want to do on more traditional healing support. And so
There's
all
one
of
more
those
skill
skills.
here.
Yes.
Or are you going to say something else?
notice,
You going to say something else?
No. You will notice that these all are the instruments, and then the fifth skill, the F5, is a bit different. This is the crescendo that we've been talking about. So when you use the crescendo, you're going to kind of have a warm-up, where you're going to conduct all your instruments to kind of strike a chord at once and release a wave of energy. It's going to deal damage to enemies and also grant your allies barrier. And the effect of this will scale based on how many instruments you have. So it's going to get, right now, 25% better for all of the effects based on how many instruments. So if you have all 4 instruments up, it can potentially get double the effect of this. And it's going to get additional effects based on traits. You can see that it's going to also get Might and Fury based on a trait per...
Strike up the band and unleash a wave of sonic magic. Instruments playing in the background contribute to the amplitude, increasing strength of the wave. Does damage, gives barrier. I don't know if it's for you or for all allies also. Might per instrument and fury per instrument.
Instrument up. And, you know, ends up being a pretty flexible skill. That's kind of like your bigger payoff. But yeah, that kind of comprises the core of the profession loop. Again, building up the notes, using your instruments. I think you can probably aim to have 2 or 3 instruments up with like a correct rotation. You know, 4 if you're really going for it, to get some powerful tide swinging effects out of these skills.
Maybe I just mash all my buttons with 0 notes so that I can crescendo. Yeah. Probably not ideal, but it is an option available to you.
Yeah, you can, you know, use all your instruments at once to get that strong value immediately, but then you do lose out on having those instruments be up for the longer period of time. As we're going to see from the traits, there are bonuses that just come with these instruments being behind you.
Might be Soldier's Gear. I think he has more than base Mesmer HP. Maybe.
So we can go into the utilities next, before we go into the traits. So the utility type for this...
Tale of the Second Scion. Okay, so their new line of skills are called Tales. Muck, did you see the drums have 500 base CC? Okay, so here's the thing. It said that the drums did like 200 CC. It did a 2-second stun, and then it did a 2-second daze, and then it does a 1-second daze, right? Now the question is do they overlap, or is it like circle and then donut, right? Because if it's circle, donut, then you just get hit with one of those effects. But if it is like big circle and then medium circle on top of it and then little circle on top of it, then that would mean if you're in the center, you get hit with all three. I highly doubt it's like that. They haven't really done a skill like that before. So I don't think it's 500 CC. I think it's like 500 is if you add everything on the tooltip, and there's a few other skills in the game that have that set up. Yeah.
Elite spec will be Tails.
Okay, Tail. Deliver the story of Olreen and the Dragon Cycle, rejuvenating nearby allies. I haven't told you guys about Olreen! We're like, yeah, we know. Reciting the tale with 2 or more instruments playing will increase the healing received by allies for a short duration. Plus 33% healing effectiveness.
They're going to be kind of vocal things, just like shouts, where you're going to like say a message when you use them. And these tales are all based on the Legends of Tyria. They're specifically focused more on like lore and heroes you've known from Guild Wars 2, rather than like, you know, Revenant has like Guild Wars 1 things. But this game, you know, it's been around for a long time, so we're going to talk about the heroes that you all know and have played with as your adventures through the game.
So Joko, right?
So as I said, they're kind of like vocal skills, just like shouts. When you use them, there's going to be an additional effect. So, you know, you can hover over the Tale of the Soul Keeper. This one's based around
Rouse Soul Keeper, the Metal Legion song for Almora. Rouse allies with the Legend of Almora, granting offensive boons. That's kind of a spoiler, isn't it? Might, Fury, and Alacrity. Reciting this tale with the lute playing grants you notes. Wait, what? Wait, reciting this with the lute playing grants you 2 notes. Interesting. Okay.
Or a Soul Keeper. It's going to grant offensive boons to your allies. And then you can see each of them have a performance bonus, which is kind of the little hook. And basically, all the utility skills correspond to an instrument, and they get stronger while that instrument is playing. So Almora is corresponding to the lute. So if you use it while the lute is playing, you'll grant some extra notes to yourself, so you can get some other instruments playing. And then we can go into the other ones. You know, next we have the Honorable Rogue, which is
Tale of the Honorable Rogue. Quote the escapades of Dougal Keen, causing nearby allies to become extraordinarily nimble and liberating them from movement impairing conditions. Real quick, I've talked on stream and on my YouTube videos a few times about some stuff I liked from the novels. One of the novels, which was not Sea of Sorrows, what was it called? Ghost of Ascalon, that was it. Ghost of Ascalon, Dougal Keen was like the closest thing to the main character, but he was in the main group in that book. Now he's just hanging around in Lion's Arch all day and eating. He's been at the last few important meetings, but he's just been eating snacks. Quote the escapades of Dougal Keen, causing nearby allies to become extraordinarily nimble and liberating them from movement impairing conditions. Give swiftness, remove cripple, chill, and immobilize. Gain 50 endurance. Reciting this tale with the drums playing grants allies a super speed for 4 seconds.
Going to be Dougal Keen, the protagonist from the well-known, amazing
and it has
Ghost of Ascalon
two
book,
charges.
That I'm sure everyone is aware of. He's a super cool character. But this one, he is a thief, a rogue. You know, his daring adventure is going to make everyone faster, remove conditions, and also grant endurance. And he corresponds to the drum, so if that's playing, you can also give some super speed to your allies.
I'm kind of imagining the concept of this. Like, someone's like, help, I'm caught in a net. And he'd be like, you know, Dougal never got caught in a net. Bop, 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 bop. And you're just like, ugh. And then just with a groan, they get out of the net just from sheer force of will, not wanting to hear about Dougal again.
And then the last one, or not the last one, the next supportive one is going to be
Tale of the Valiant Marshal. Orate the heroism of Traherne. Oh my god, more spoilers. Calling nearby allies to action. Actually, I guess it doesn't say that he's dead, because Dougal's not dead. Orate the heroism of Traherne, calling nearby allies to action. Break their stuns and brace them for battle. Reciting this tale with the harp playing will further bolster allies, 2200 barrier, and a stun break. Again, it's just like, in the moment that I need a stun break, there's no time to tell me a story. So it's just like, I'm like, oh god, I'm stunned. This next blow is going to kill me. And they're like, yeah, Traherne wouldn't have gotten stunned. You're like, ah.
the Tale of the Valiant Marshal. It is going to
people
be
recognize this character.
Your defensive shout based on Traherne, another amazing character. It's going to give your allies protection, resistance, break, stun, you know, pretty powerful defensive effects, and it's got the harp playing as well. It's also going to give your allies barrier. And then the last skill is actually going to be an offensive ability. It's going to be the Tail of the Torch.
Scarlet? Really? She made the cut? Recall the cruelty of Scarlet Briar as you revile your target with a battery of insults, damaging their ego. What? 4x damage, weakness, vulnerability, 3... Wait, okay. The first hit does damage and weakness. The second hit does vulnerability and damage. The third hit does boon removal and damage. And then the fourth hit dazes you. Reciting this tale with the flute playing will inflict your target with additional torment and defiance break per hit. Defiance break and torment. So I'm just vicious mockery, yeah. So it's like you're fighting someone in combat, and you're like, "Yo, you ever heard the tale of Scarlet Briar?" And they're like, "What?" You're like her. You're a bitch. And they're like, "Oh!" They just get hit with all this shit. And you're just like Moon Knight, random BS go, just tons of stuff.
Mastermind with another person that, you know, we talked about this in the blog, Scarlet Briar. This is going to be a more targeted shout. You're going to almost mock your enemies viciously, one might say. Kind of targeting on them, summoning those laughing clockwork knight heads on your enemy. And it's going to pulse 4 times. The first pulse will leave them weakened, then you'll leave them vulnerable, then it will strip boons, and the last one will daze them. And it corresponds to the flute, so when you have that active, it's going to apply additional torment per pulse and also do some extra defiance damage.
Oh yeah, I see it. There's like little clockwork knights on their shoulders. It's just like, you're a bitch, you're a bitch. And they're just like whispering in your ear.
For, you know, PD situations.
You suck. You're a short mother mucker.
Yeah,
Nobody likes you.
I'm hoping you're hearing them as Cal's playing, but when you play these tales, like I said, they have spoken lines. Each of them have about 4 that'll play in order. So as you fight with them and use them, it'll like kind of, you'll hear a poem that your character will say. And I'm sure, you know, it'll be on the wiki that everyone correlates, but you know.
Honestly, I'm more excited about this Scarlet Briar button than everything else they've shown up to this point.
Pretty cool narrative work from the team. And, you know, nice little story to get to hear about these characters that you've, you know, played through in the game. We can also go to the heal, you know, Oreen, we showed that one off. It's going to be a chunky heal for you and your allies when you use it, and its performance bonus, it's going to, instead of corresponding to a specific instrument, it's just going to care about how many instruments you have up. And so when you use it, if you have 2 or more instruments, you're going to apply this Scion for Pre buff to your allies. That's going to increase the incoming healing that they get from all sources, including the heal. So, you know, definitely want to make sure you have 2 instruments up before you use the skill to get like pretty good value. And then we can move to the elite skill, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard about already. This is the
Tale of the August Queen. Retale how Queen Jenna protected her city in their time of need, granting allies distortion and chaos aura. I'm really worried about this one. Granting allies distortion. Once upon a time, okay, for those that don't know, distortion is near invulnerability. And 2 seconds of it is insane. That's like 2 seconds of aegising everything. And there was a time period where Mesmers could do distortion on the whole group. And it was deemed too powerful, and they removed it from the game. Like, you could do Veil Guardian, and anytime he was about to do a green explosion, just distort it. Just the whole group distortion. No healing is needed. It was deemed too powerful. This is bonkers. I am very surprised they're bringing this back because of how problematic they said it was. So 2 seconds distortion, immune to conditions and damage, Chaos Aura. Performance, command every instrument to begin playing in the background. Duration is determined by the number of instruments you currently have playing. Duration determined by the number of instruments. Duration per instrument, 3 seconds. Okay. Again, conceptually, this is stupid. Like, you're about to get hit with a life-killing, like a life-ending blow, and then the bard in the back is just like, I'm gonna tell you about the time when Lake Dark was sieging Divinity's Reach, and Queen Jenna did some stuff that was super sus, and she just made a big shield. She said no, and no one got hurt. You just gotta say no. And everyone's like, no. And then they distort, and they're like, oh god.
The August Queen, based around Queen Jenna's protection of, you know, Divinity's Reach in the living world. And its effects base, it's going to give distortion and chaos aura to allies.
One guy's out of range and dies, and Bard's just like, he didn't think about Jenna.
And distortion share to allies has a storied history in our game, and we are aware of its potential. But we also think that distortion share is probably a peak power fantasy for support Mesmer. And we definitely wanted to try it again in the spec that's focused around it. And we're hoping that putting it on an elite skill, where it has an adjustable duration, adjustable cooldown, and some additional effects we can also weigh against its power, will leave it in a state that it is, you know, possible to be in our game. We definitely.
So, okay, so by having it on an elite skill with a longer cooldown, Like, for example, the greens on Veil Guardian, I believe they happen every 20 seconds. So this is a 75-second cooldown, less than that with Alacrity. At best, you could do this like on 1 out of every 3 or 4 greens. So it wouldn't just completely trivialize the mechanic unless you just had a whole bunch of bards.
We don't want this to be how it is before, where it's very oppressive, but we do think that, you know, trying it out and giving it an opportunity to be in the game and kind of elevate support Mesmer and what it's doing is just pretty interesting to us. So,
how likely do you think it will continue to give AoE distortion by launch?
We will see in the beta. Maybe it does the classic, you know, goes to blur and then blur is too strong, but, you know, this is all, you know, betas are meant for testing, and again, this is something that we really want to do the super cool thing, and so we're going to try the super cool thing, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
I think there's definitely going to be a lot of things like that we'll see throughout a lot of these elite specializations. There are I guess, some aggressive ideas or some very wild ideas, you might say, and not all of them are going to work, but we think that's what betas are for, trying out cool stuff. And
I'm wondering how many legendary challenge mode raids could be beaten by 10 bards just cycling a group distortion for the bad mechanics. As long as they can meet the DPS requirements, that's going to make it super chill.
And sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. And we're going to fix the things that don't work. So if AoE distortion on the elite skill here is going to break the game, it will likely go away.
Yep, and we can also see that has a performance bonus of its own that's also, I think, pretty strong. When you use this skill, you're going to bring up all your instruments for a duration. Baseline pretty short, just 3 seconds, but that duration is going to scale based on how many instruments you had before. So if you use it when you have no instruments up, just they'll all come up for 3 seconds, but say you had 2 instruments up and then you use it, they'll all come up for 9 seconds. So giving you value when you use it, even if you had a lot of instruments up. This is another way to use it to get like a quick crescendo, get all your instruments up for, those buffs that they give, to kind of also balance out that, distortion can be powerful, but this can also be another powerful effect that you can use for a different reason.
Perfect for me, who just wants to press all my shatters and then press the elite, get maximum duration.
So those cover all the utilities, so we can now move into the traits. I'm sure everyone's just so excited to see.
All right, and I'll do one last hover over of everything before we swap to the next spec, so I'll let you guys know when to get your print screen buttons ready for all those screenshots if you haven't been keeping up already. Let's put some random traits on so it doesn't do the flashing thing that everyone really loved the last time we did elite spec previews. All right, where should we start? Minor traits?
Yep, minor traits. So I mean, the very first one is just going to be the basic minor trait that just gives you access to everything, doesn't really do anything.
I was going to say, okay, so build up notes instead of summoning illusions. Shatters are replaced by instrument skills, which consume notes to continue playing, gain access to tails.
As it just explains what the Troubadour wants to do, but then we can move to the Master Minor, which is going to be Harmonized.
Master Minor. Gain bonus outgoing healing and damage per instrument playing, 4%.
This is going to be pretty simple. You're kind of already saw in the tooltip. It's going to cause your instruments to give increased outgoing damage and healing. It's going to be the first kind of minor bonus for just having those instruments up. You just get stronger. Then we can move to the Grandmaster Minor, Symphonic Resonance.
Grandmaster Minor. Crescendo grants affected allies 2 might per instrument and fury per instrument.
This, again, you saw from the tooltip. Crescendo grants affected allies boons per instrument playing. So this can, again, scale the might and fury based on how many instruments, kind of just playing into what you want to do with Crescendo. Then both the Adept and the Master tier kind of have themes to them. They're going to have 2 instrument traits and then 1 kind of generic value trait. So we can see that if we go into the Adept tier, the first one is going to be Mayhem. Your Flute,
Flute now applies Torment. While the Flute is playing, heal yourself when you apply Confusion or Torment.
Instrument traits will have 2 effects. The first one will kind of augment what the initial effect when you play the instrument does, and then another one will give you an additional bonus for having that instrument playing behind you. So we see Mayhem, and it causes your Flute to additionally apply Torment, make the Condition burst just a bit better, and then while the Flute is playing behind yourself, you'll heal yourself when you apply Condition or Torment. This trait is aimed more towards like open world gameplay. If you want to be more of a condition duelist in competitive modes, just giving you a bit more sustain and damage for playing a more condition, torment, confusion, bard, or Troubadour.
He said bard. They admit it. They admit it!
Then we get into the middle trait, where we have.
Also, it's kind of funny that just by that one trait, you could have a build based on being in blob fights at World v World and just playing a flute so badly that the enemy team is dying. You're just, like, seriously running around them and just shrieking into this pipe over and over and over, and they're like, stop! Just dropping.
Hold the note. Crescendo extends the duration of boons nearby allies. Boon extension is another core Mesmer fantasy that we have before on Signet of Inspiration, but now we're having it on this trait. We have to choose between some of the other effects. Again, powerful, making Crescendo even more powerful. I would say these specs did have in development names that, even as developers, we have to work to say the correct terms. And we get to the bottom trait where we have Syncopate. This is going to be the drum trait.
Deafening Drum releases an additional quick wave after a delay. While your drum is playing, deal damage to enemies you disable.
When you play the drum after a delay, it'll release a quick wave where you'll also do a shorter days, just additional CC on top of your skill, and give you a passive that when the drum is playing, you'll deal additional damage to enemies you disable. And so this is kind of an effect that we see on traits like Bunker Down or Lightning Rod from other elite or from other specializations in the game. If this, Mesmer has no swords with CC skills, so just gives them some extra value here. So this can be a DPS trait or also just generic support trait for more CC. Moving on to the master tier, we have the first one is the loot trait Shredding.
Loot's damage is increased per wave. Deal increased strike damage while you have the loot playing.
This
25% increased damage per wave. Loot playing damage increases by 20%.
More damage. It'll cause your loot to deal more damage per wave. So the first wave will deal normal damage, second wave will deal 25% more damage, and then the last wave will deal 50% more damage. So making sure you really want to hit those, especially the later ones that come out. And as well as passive, it's just going to give you a pretty good big damage increase while the loot is playing. So this will be a DPS spec. We'll want this trait compared to the others in this tier. It's going to be pretty important to keep your loot playing as it's a pretty big damage modifier. Then we can move to Raconteur. This is again the generic trait.
Tails grant a note and recharge their corresponding instrument. Recharge time reduced by 3 seconds, and lesser recharge time reduced by 1 second. Heal and elite tails recharge all instruments for a lesser amount. Okay, so the lesser amount is 1 second. The dedicated ones are 3 seconds, and it grants 1 note.
It's going to be, the trait that affects your elite specs utilities. This one will augment the tails. When you use a tail, it'll grant you a note, and then also recharge the corresponding instrument. So like if you use the Almora, it'll recharge the lute. If you use Dougal one, it'll recharge the drum. And it'll also give you a lesser recharge for the heal and elite. Since they don't have a really specific instrument, it's going to recharge all of them, but just for a lesser amount. Then lastly, we can move on to Love Song. This trait is going to affect the harp. Kind of did what you saw before, where it causes the harp to get you distortion. So
playing the harp grants you distortion. Periodically grant boons to nearby allies as the harp plays. 2 seconds alacrity, 3 second regen. Interval 3 seconds.
The Troubadour doesn't have distortion baseline.
And again, that might be without concentration. I don't know.
Those that want it, to kind of price into it a little. And then PvE is also where you're going to be applying to alacrity and regen in all game modes. Or regen in all game modes. PvE will also give alacrity, kind of getting those important boons out while also getting some sustained healing.
So, is there going to be quickness in this build somewhere? We've seen alacrity now.
Then we can move on to the Grandmaster traits.
You want to start in the middle though, the Grandmasters, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So
when call in a response, when you use an instrument above the note threshold, create an after image that plays that instrument after a delay. So you have to be at max notes.
First one, just call and response, we already talked about in the blog post. When you use an instrument at the note threshold, you're going to create an after image that will play the same instrument after a delay. After image here basically means phantasm that's not a phantasm. It'll appear in the world, but it won't be targetable, and it won't give you a note when it goes away. We didn't want you to get a free note when you're already requiring notes for this. That's why we kind of created this new type of illusion. But as you can see with what Cal's doing, as you get those notes and you play the lute, it'll spawn and then play the lute again. So it can double the CC from your drum, it can double the healing from your harp. It can also just get you more damage. So pretty versatile trait. We can move on to the bottom trait, Altered Chord. This trait's going to focus around Crescendo. It's going to have 2 effects.
Crescendo prompts your last played instrument to take the spotlight, augmenting Crescendo's effects. Playing an instrument recharges Crescendo. Altered Chord, plus 25% damage. Confusion, 3 second days, healing. Oh, okay, the first one is Lute is 25% more damage. The Flute is Confusion. The Drum has a Disable. And the harp gets more healing. Recharge time reduced by 2 seconds.
The first one is just whenever you use an instrument, it's going to reduce the cooldown of Crescendo a bit. And then it's going to have an additional effect that cares about the instrument you played right before you press Crescendo. So Crescendo's effects are going to be augmented based on the instrument you played last. So kind of the gameplay around this trait is you want to be using your instruments as much as possible to get more Crescendos out, but it also wants you to make sure that you know when you're about to Crescendo so you can keep an instrument to get the right bonus. Again, giving you kind of varied utility from this. You can get more healing, more CC. Just depends on how you want to play. And lastly, we can go to the top Grandmaster, which is Fortissimo.
After using Crescendo, gain a note every interval for a duration. Gain increased attributes for each instrument that you have playing. So you gain 5% increase to all stats per instrument that you have out. And there's 4 instruments, so you get up to 20% from that. This lasts 5 seconds, and you gain a note every second for 5 seconds, allowing you basically to machine gun out more skills.
This one's kind of going to try and alter how you use Crescendo in general. The first effect it has is going to give you an attribute bonus for having your instruments up in the stacks. So if you have 2 instruments, it'll be 10%. If you have all 4, 20%. That's a pretty big number. And it's going to cause Crescendo when you use it to give you a note per second for a duration. So right now it'll give you 6 notes pretty rapidly. So instead of, normally you want to use Crescendo as your finisher, you want to use it as your opener here. So you're going to Crescendo, then it's going to give you a lot of notes. You're going to get your instruments. This gives you a lot of note generation, so you can have, have the possibility of having 3 or 4 instruments up for a high duration to get value out of that attribute increase.
Definitely set up the elite pretty well as well.
Yes. I think that covers it for the traits. I mentioned before talking about, Troubadour and Chronomancer, fitting them into supports, but kind of readjusting where things live. I think while we're doing traits, can show off like an example of that is Bountiful Disillusionment. Before stability was put on the distortion slot, and it was pretty powerful, especially with Chronomancer's ability to double that and things being instant cast. So we're shifting around the bonuses back a little, putting regen back on that F4 slot and changing the F5 slot to be stability. To kind of give Troubadour better access to that and have specific things that the Troubadour can be better at than Chronomancer, and in turn, hopefully going back in Chronomancer and strengthening up this identity that we had to, you know, think about. We had to remove a bit of it when we added support things because it was just very powerful, especially with C-Split. So the goal is that we can put more things in Troubadour's kit so that Chronomancer can be what it wants to be again.
And the goal
again,
is that Chrono will still be viable as a support build, right?
Yes, very much so.
Won't be able to do all the things that it is able to do.
Yeah.
They're just half gutting it. Okay.
That kind of covers it for
anything
the
else?
Honestly, their description of this reminds me a lot from back when I played World of Warcraft, during the early days when Alliance had the Paladins and Horde had the Shamans, and the opposite was not true. The Alliance did not have access to Shamans, Horde did not have access to Paladins. So anytime they buffed or nerfed Paladins and Shamans, because they would always have to be compared against each other, and they each had their own things, but they were constantly on a scale against one another for balancing. And then finally, when they just gave in and gave Horde Paladins and gave Alliance Shamans, then they got the freedom to make each of them be their own thing and not constantly be on a scale weighing against the other one.
I think hover over all those traits, make sure people got screenshots.
Get ready for your screenshots. We'll do all the traits, then all the skills. Surely Taylor will fill the air as I hover over these things with his new and improved microphone.
No, I just need more water.
Probably need more water.
Yep. A crescendo using the skill. But I think all the instruments, kind of the concept of being, a one-person band. You're a Mesmer taking your illusions to have all your instruments playing behind you instead of like leading other people, so you can be your own concert and be your own be your own conductor. That's kind of the initial idea that went behind all of these skills.
You're almost done. Could probably go way faster. The chat is all on top of these screenshots.
Yeah.
Just give them like 1 pixel and go back in the pod. Valiant Marshall. What was the last one?
And again, gonna plug the book Ghosts of Ascalon, Dougal Keen. If you don't know who that is,
I already plugged it, dude. It's fine.
Very good book. Release. I have my own copy. Cal has his own copy. Because we're just such lore heads.
Taylor's definitely more of a lore head than I am, but do my best. All right, I think that's everything. So we can move on. I'm going to switch back to this screen while I get set up on the next character. We'll be showing off Luminary next.
Guardian mains, get hype.
Let's see here.
Prepare your lamps.
Statements. Yeah, obviously you guys saw the video of Luminary. We have kind of the what do we call it? Like a brazier. There's been so many words that we've called like this power source of the Luminary internally.
Don't get hyped. Don't get hyped.
I just want to make sure I get the right one. But we kind of have this like Guardian elite spec, for lack of a better terminology, because we're gonna see a lot of things that really play into like that Guardian protective like playstyle. And we've kind of seen a lot of different shifts with like the Willbender being a lot more mobility, and then like Dragon Hunter being more that ranged character, Firebrand obviously being like the super powerful support kit. They're all like kind of adjacent to what Guardian typically is and thematically is, but the Luminary kind of leans a lot heavier into just normal Guardian themes. Well,
real quick, since we're kind of leaving the Bard section, now I'm not a Mesmer main. I occasionally dip into Mesmer and try it out. Do a guide, or it's like, okay, hey, they just made support Mirage possible. Here's my experience with it after a day, stuff like that. I visit my Mesmer on occasion. It's not my main thing. So it's entirely possible. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Looking at the Bard, based on just what I've seen so far, the AoE distortion and decent access to AoE stability, based on that trait that they showed, as an Alack provider, I'm sure it's going to be totally fine as an Alack providing heal support. I didn't really see anything else there to make me think, oh, this is so much better than like Chrono, stuff like that. I didn't really see anything else there that I'm like, oh my god, this is unique, stuff like that. It's just like, it just seems to be the theme, Like the theme is definitely, unique for people that are like, really into music and stuff like that. But beyond that, it doesn't, to me, at a glance, look like it has a lot to really set itself apart from the others. Like the fact that they're gutting Chrono to make Troubadour be more Chrono is kind of odd to me. But I guess we'll see how much they change about Chrono to really see how this is going to land on the scale by comparison.
Really elevating them, because we saw in the video, we had like the Radiant Shroud set up over here so we can come back. Radiant Shroud giving access to like these weapons.
But like for example, Chrono has like Well of Precognition. This is like, you know, it's just ample sources of Aegis and stability. It can be, you know, quick heal or lack heal by changing one trait, unless they change that, you know, stuff like that. So it's like, if we compare what we saw with Bard right now to what we know Chrono can do right now, the Troubadour had a little bit of barrier, I guess, and then the distortion thing.
Of light and flame to the Luminary is kind of this, just like really guardian-y guardian, for lack of a better word. Well, we can see here that this wasn't quite clear in the blog post, and some people were kind of confused, it seemed like. We do still have the core virtues here available to Luminary, and that was a pretty deliberate decision as we were thinking about, like, well, we knew we want to do the Shroud pretty early and have, like, access to the different weapons. There's the question of whether or not we should do, like, Luminary-specific virtues as well, because we obviously have, like, Dragon Hunter gets its own virtues, Willbender gets its own flavor of the virtues, Firebrand replaces virtues with tomes. But the core virtues are actually play pretty well into what the spec is trying to do. We have like a lot of that protective, defensive, supporty Guardian here, on top of like the more bruisery, aggressive versions of Guardian. And, you know, like...
Hang on a sec. Hey, IP. IP is thinking about trying Guild Wars 2. Is there anything I should know? Real quick, IP, that right there is a guide for new players. If you're just starting out, strongly recommend checking that out. And feel free to ask us questions if you get stuck.
Virtue of Resolve, Virtue of Courage, these are just like really skills that fit really well into this style of play, and there's some additional virtue hooks that we'll see once we get into the traits, but it's going to play really well with the virtues trait line. And so we felt pretty good about just having the core virtues alongside the new flash mechanic of the Radiant Shroud. And this is something that we covered.
Okay, F4 is into Radiant Shroud. The recharge time for the skill is reduced for each unused Radiant weapon in Shroud by 5 seconds.
Pretty in detail.
20-second cooldown if you, you know, baseline. 20-second cooldown baseline.
The blog, but I'm just going to reiterate for everyone. The Radiant Shroud, the idea here is that it's like a different take on, say, Death Shroud or, you know, Shadow Shroud. It's kind of closer to like Photon Forge, which a lot of people realized where
I was expecting a Shroud per virtue. A Shroud per virtue? You're out, your blue mind.
There's not like a gating resource. Holosmith obviously has heat. The difference here is that the usage of the Shroud skills is what's going to be affecting the cooldown. So anytime it's available, you can just go into Radiant Shroud. Let me just show that off real quick. You can see like the power source kind of gets consumed to apply like the Radiant Aura here and really...
Oh gosh, Catalyst enjoyers, rejoice! The teeny tiny bar that's barely visible is back!
Source the power of all of these weapons is kind of the idea. So that'll go away. When you're in Shroud, it'll come back.
Yay!
But when we go into Shroud, we can see that the base cooldown here, if we don't do anything, it's going to be 5 seconds. And that's also going to be true of the first weapon that you use. The base cooldown is still going to be 5 seconds, and it's going to go up by 5 seconds each time you use an additional weapon skill. The way it's explained is slightly different because it actually reduces the cooldown, but, you know, fundamentally, the cooldown is lower the fewer weapons you use. And most Shrouds, you know, have that 10-second cooldown, so if you go and use a couple of weapons, you'll have access to more of that normal Shroud cooldown, but there's more space to have a really big burst of power, because we see here, going in, and we'll cover all these skills again, but come and use the hammer, that's going to be your main damage-focused weapon, and like the staff can be a little bit more supportive, it's going to create a symbol on the ground, have some healing attached to it as well. So a lot of these things do have like some situational value, some of them are going to be the ones you just always want to press. You always go in, use that button, get that value. These skills do still have cooldowns, so you can't just, you know, go in, press the shield block, leave, come back in 5 seconds, press the shield block again. But you kind of have a decision point every time that you go into Shroud of how long do I want to stay in here, how many weapons do I want to utilize, and then that's going to affect like the next time you can go back in. So there's definitely a case where you just want to pop in, use the hammer, maximize your damage, leave, and then come back 5 seconds later. Maybe you want to use the block is a situation that came up, so you want to have better access to that. But fundamentally, it's a resourceless Shroud that the resource is, I guess, the skills themselves, because the more you use the skills, the more the...
Chimera says, this is probably the most negative chat I've seen on this. Everyone else seems pretty hyped. I haven't really seen enough to be negative. So I saw, we just saw the Troubadour thing, right? The Troubadour thing, I'm comparing it to what's already in the game. The Chronomancer, the Mirage, and the Virtuoso. Now the Troubadour is more of a support, so Virtuoso is out of the conversation. Virtuoso doesn't really support. There is support Mirage, and there is multiple support builds for Chrono. And if we're comparing what the Troubadour has been showcased against Chrono already in the game, it's a worse Chrono with distortion. But they said we're going to nerf Chrono to make Bard look better. And so it's like, okay, yeah, that's kind of odd, but all right. So really, it seems like it's just the theme. You know, if you want to support and have magic clocks floating around you, okay. But if you want to support and have instruments floating around you, okay. So it just seems like a themed thing. Other than that, it's not really that different. The Guardian one, we're just starting watching the Guardian one, so I don't really have anything negative to say about this yet, other than the jab I made about the visibility of it. This little bar here. I mean, come on, that was a fair jab. I was jabbing about this tiny little bar here. The visibility is low. It's hard to see. Like for Druid, the Astral Power bar covers this whole section here above the Endurance. They should just do that. They should just have this over here so that you can see it right here. It's just easier to see, that's all.
The cooldown increases.
I don't think that was that bad of a jab.
One extra thing here we're going to see is that there's a few extra buffs getting applied from the minor traits, so we can cover those real quick. The first one is a buff that we're calling the Luminary's Blessing. This is just a small strike damage reduction that's going to be applied to you and nearby allies every time you equip a radiant weapon, so not the flip skills, but any of the base skills. And then there's also going to be this passive attached to each weapon from the Radiant Armaments Grandmaster Minor that, in this case, we see with the hammer. It's going to be more focused on damage, so you get a buff that says increased strike damage to crowd-controlled foes, immobilized foes. And that's going to persist for a bit of time after you exit Shroud. So when you go in and you're going to be using multiple weapons, if I'm more of a damage-focused build, I'm going to make sure that I want to end on the hammer, because that's going to give me that lingering bonus that is the increased damage.
Playing on Steam Deck, the tiny bar is invisible. Oh, good God, I didn't even think about that. Oh, wow. Did they not say Luminary UI is still a work in progress? Well, I mean, all of them. All of them are still a work in progress. They said at the beginning that this is a beta, so all of the classes are going to get tweaks and stuff like that. I will say that Catalyst went all the way to live with that same little bar. So they have a history of leaving that stuff in, but I hope that it gets updated and gains more visibility. Sure.
The auto attack is going to be a similar, it's just going to be like kind of a burst of energy around you. The
Glaring Burst. Create a burst of energy, the effect of which changes based on the radiant weapon you have equipped. Okay, so I think is that sword is vulnerability, shield is resolution. Is that, I can't tell what the third one is. One of them just says damage increased by 50%. And the staff is regen. That's the third one's hammer? Okay, hammer.
Interesting thing here is that it's going to be a different effect based off which weapon you have equipped. So if you have the sword, you're going to get a little vulnerability on top. Hammer's going to be the most damage. Shield's going to give some resolution. Staff, you're going to get some regen. And potentially a little bit of like a small heal attached to the more defensive ones. And then the bit of damage attached to the more aggressive ones. So we can go into these a little bit more in depth now, starting off with the dazzling hammer.
I guess one thought I have about the I'm still thinking about that comment that said the chat is so negative. I think when Teapot and Lorenity watched it, because you pointed that you specifically mentioned them, that they were watching it while it was live and everyone was seeing it for the first time. I think we've got a lot of people in here right now that have already seen this whole thing. They've already formed an opinion, and now they're here to watch us and see what our opinion is and to see if it matches their opinion. So there's probably going to be some people in here that are just like wanting to see if we hate it the way they hate it, because we're watching it hours after the fact.
Is, again, your most offensive slot. You see kind of starting with the overhead slam. All of these start with what we vaguely call an equip skill, where I perform an attack while equipping the weapon, and that's going to flip the slot over into the follow-up skill, Shining Spin, which is just going to be an A.
So Shining Spin does damage, dealing damage, does increased damage to foes that are disabled, 20% increase.
Damage skill that deals increased damage against disabled
180 to 180 size radius, so very tight radius.
A common theme, we'll see that in a couple other places as well, where this spec's really going to be looking for those moments of opportunity where you're going to land an immobilize or land a crowd control.
Symbol of Blaze. Oh no, he did. Really okay, Symbol of Blaze. Teleport to your target. Oh, that's just a sword. Never mind.
Next up, we have the Luminous.
Okay, Luminous Staff. Slam your Radiant Staff into the ground, granting boons to allies and creating a symbol. There's Prot. Luminary's Blessing. Reduced incoming strike damage. Heal when this expires. Resolution. Does damage 4 times. It doesn't say the amount of healing anywhere on the tooltip. Boon radius 300. Okay. All right.
Staff. This is going to be that staff. It's going to give you a
combo field light.
Passives again once we get into the traits. So this is going to be an outgoing healing buff. The idea is you slam the staff into the ground. This is going to create a resolution symbol.
To be fair, about 30% of Twitch chat during the live stream was them yelling 720p. I haven't looked at the recording of the. I haven't looked at the Twitch chat here since the first 15 minutes when everyone was screeching about the audio. But yeah, look, I love these guys. The production of this could have been a lot better.
And it's also going to grant protection to your allies when you use the skill initially. It's going to give some prot. The resolution symbol is going to go out, and that's going to flip over into restorative glow. There's going to be a AoE heal, AoE condition removal, and it's also going to give a bit of that strike damage redirection that we've seen in a few places before. It's going to be a little bit smaller, 10% redirected from your allies to yourself. This one has kind of a safety valve built into it, where anytime that you take damage, while this effect is active, if you fall underneath 50% health, it's going to remove itself from you, so you won't.
Oh, that's so good. So there was, once upon a time, there was a version of the Scrapper, I believe it was Bulwark Gyro, where when you use it, a percentage of damage the group takes would go to you. And, you know, then also it did like the barrier thing. But when you used it, if someone else stood in something that was like a red circle that they needed to get out of, and they didn't get out of it, they would kill them and you. So like it's like if you were on Bone Skinner, which and then like you move out of a red circle and you have that gyro active, and someone else would stand in a red circle, it would kill them and you. And the fact that he said that this sponges damage from your team, but it has a safety net where if you go below half health, it disables it, like the feature turns off. That's really nice. Like, the healer's like, look, I want to help you. I ain't dying for you, stupidity. Like, that's really good that that's there. I like that.
Yourself by applying this buff to your allies in like a world environment, but it's just gonna be like that extra layer of damage reduction to your allies. Next up, we can take a look at the sword. Let's get some close-ups on these weapons actually real quick, because these look super cool. Our team really crushed it. I mean, they crushed it with like all the specs, but I'm just really a big fan of like the art that came together for the Luminary. See the hammer there, the staff here. Just looks super sweet. We'll see a lot more of these models on some of the other skills as well.
Chat, just throwing it out there. When we first saw the trailer for this, I totally thought that the
really a big fan
the
of, like,
staff
the art that
art.
came together for
Hang on
the
a second.
See the hammer there.
I thought that was a great X. I misread it so much. I was like, oh my god, they're finally adding a type of a two-hand axe into the game. It's going to this guy. No, it's a stick.
Staff here. Just looks super sweet. We'll see a lot more of these models on some of the other skills as well. Stay tuned. Next up, we're gonna look at the sword. We start with Gleaming Blade. This is gonna be a bit of a
leap to the target and slash, inflicting cripple and vulnerability. Luminary's Blessing, reduced incoming strike damage, heal when this expires, cripple vuln, combo finisher leap, 450 range.
ability. We leap in, do initial slash, do some cripple, do some vulnerability. That's going to follow up into Lucent Thrust, just a quick sword stab. That's going to immobilize movement impaired foes. So a pretty natural combo. You leap in, apply cripple, and then you potentially land and immobilize, which can then play into like your hammer CC, hammer damage. You do equip both the sword and the shield anytime you use either of the sword or the shield. Just because it looks way cooler. Like, it just looks way cooler to have a sword and a shield equipped than to just have a sword or just have a shield. But you will only get the passive of the skill you actually use. So here we get the sword passive, which is going to be an increased movement speed. So this is, again, that more mobility-focused slot. You can leap in, leap away, and then get a little extra burst of speed to chase down your enemy or run away from your enemy. And then last up, we're going to take a look at the Radiant.
Radiant Bulwark. Block attacks. Grant Aegis to nearby allies on activation. 30-second cooldown. Aegis for the whole group. 4-second duration. That's enough to get the job done. And a 2-second long block. Not bad.
Bulwark. There's just going to be a channel block. Nothing too crazy, but it's also going to give an AoE Aegis to nearby allies anytime that I use that skill. So a little bit more of that situational, shareable Aegis to just be that powerful defensive moment. And that's going to follow up into the Brilliant Slam. There's just going to be a quick shield bash. That's going to daze. Pretty short duration daze. It's going to be more of that interrupt value, which is another layer of crowd control to potentially set up your...
So it's basically Engineer Shield 5. You hit the button, you start blocking, you press the button again, and you do an attack with the shield.
Hammer skills are your future skills.
Not identical, but extremely similar.
So that's the Shroud mechanic. And I think I covered all the things that I wanted to cover, so we can hop into the utility skills next. And I'll come back and do another pass on all of these tooltips at the end as well. So starting things off with the Resolute Stance, kind of a...
Stances. I'm getting stances. Resolute Stance, enter a stance that heals when you remove conditions from yourself, then heal nearby allies and remove conditions from them. Oh, it's like when you're on the airplane and the little masks come down. You take care of yourself, then help others. 7k healing, big number. Healing per condition removed, 348. So it removes 3 conditions. And for 5 seconds, you heal yourself when you remove conditions. You know what this is? This is Bear Stance on Soul Beast with Stance Sharing trait baked in by default. But yeah, 30-second cooldown. Some heal skills have a 20-second cooldown these days. Some have 30 and some are in between. But this one is 30 based on what we're seeing.
A common theme, but not a theme that is true of all the stances, is that a lot of the stances are a bit more unique in what the stance effect is. Here you see that Resolute Stance is when you remove conditions from yourself, you get a little bit of extra healing. And the idea is that all these stances have some sort of AoE component attached to them as well. So when I activate this, it's going to do an AoE heal and AoE condition removal. And the effect that happens in an area, whether it's an offensive or a defensive...
Did they show Ellie yet? That's not even this week.
We'll see a couple different flavors. But this is going to be playing into that stance effect, because I'm going to apply the stance to myself that says heal when I remove conditions from myself, and then do a pulse of AoE healing and condition removal, which will then trigger the stance, assuming you had conditions on you. So you get like kind of one trigger for free, and then the rest of your kit is going to allow you to get additional triggers. Obviously, there's a lot of condi removal in the rest of Guardian's kits, other skills, other traits that can give you a lot more healing pulses if that's something that you're interested in. You can really kind of level up your healing skill through that. Next up, we have Stalwarts.
Let's see. Stalwart stance. Break stun for nearby allies and enter a defensive stance, taking reduced damage. It doesn't even say stun break on the tooltip. Minus 33% to incoming Condi damage and incoming damage. I wonder if that stacks with protection. And resolution. And it also has Aegis. Wait, what? Dude, this tooltip's a mess. See, it doesn't have any mention at the beginning about, like, you know, blocking an attack. It says it breaks stun, but then it doesn't say it's a stun break, but it gives a block.
Stance. This one's a little bit more straightforward because we kind of put one of the more powerful.
And then he says it's straightforward. He's insulting me.
AoE components on it. There's going to be an AoE stun break for yourself and allies. Also going
Okay, stun break for yourself and allies.
to grant AoE Aegis again, so another really powerful button.
AoE Aegis.
Especially for support, but you know, personal stun break, personal Aegis, and then that personal damage reduction. Just a pretty potent defensive tool. And as mentioned, you know, this one doesn't have quite as much flavor, but is just that solid stalwart.
So, big damage reduction on itself, AoE stun break, AoE Aegis, 30-second cooldown. Pretty good button.
Defensive tool that is also pretty valuable to support builds. I'm actually going to skip over this one real quick. We'll come back to it. That's one of the more offensive focused. Let's cover the two defensive focused ones first.
Valorous stance. Enter a stance that causes you to heal allies when you grant them boons. Then, grant boons to nearby allies. Healing 37. Very small amount. But it also gives stability and prot to allies. 4 seconds of 5 stacks of stability is pretty crazy good. 30-second cooldown.
Next up, we have Valorous Stance. The stance here is that you heal allies when you grant them boons. So this is pretty similar to like altruistic healing, but instead of every time you apply a boon to anyone, you heal yourself. It's anytime you apply a boon to someone, you heal them. So this obviously does include yourself. The number hasn't been balanced yet, so the 37
Another
probably a little
standard
bit on the low
round.
end, but
very similar.
we do want this to be like a pretty powerful effect. Obviously, it gives stability and protection. These powerful defensive tools. Sorry, I got distracted by something else. But we see protection, stability, and then that's going to be healing these allies as well. I'm going to deal some damage to this. We see a bunch of heal pulses coming out, and then, I mean, you guys know how good altruistic healing is with like Empower, right? So you can now use Valor Stance, use Empower. That's potentially a lot of AoE healing.
So I like how he lowered the health of the golem to 1. He goes, I'm going to show you how good the healing on this is. And he hit the button and kept talking, and the golem didn't get healed at all. I'm sure there was just a mistake somewhere in the code he punched in, the dev code. But he didn't heal it for even 1.
In addition to a little bit of stability, a little bit of protection. This one's not a stun break because we feel like it has the potential to be strong enough. Like, assuming the healing number is right, this skill will be powerful enough that it doesn't need to be the stun break. And, you know, maybe you just want to play it alongside Stand Your Ground as well, get even more stability. There's potentially a lot of stability access with this spec that we'll see as we get into the traits as well. But just really leaning into, like, those powerful defensive boons that Guardian is so well known for. Next up, we have Effulgent Stance.
Effulgent Stance. Grant Barrier and Light Aura to nearby allies. Then enter a stance that charges up a burst of light when striking or struck by enemies. The burst of light dazes enemies if fully charged. Huh? Okay, hold on. Alright. Barrier to allies. 4,000 barrier. That's a nice barrier application, too. Light Aura to allies. Okay. Then enter a stance that charges up a burst of light when striking or struck. It dazes enemies if fully charged. Gain stacks when striking or being struck by an enemy. When this ends, damage nearby enemies based on the number of stacks. Okay, so for 4 seconds, you're just getting up as many hits in or taking as many hits as possible, and then you do some kind of big boom at the end. Maximum strength daze is 2 seconds. It's a 2-second daze with 4 seconds shipping? I don't know. Man, I would have thought it would be a much larger CC at the end with those hoops to jump through.
This one's kind of a mix where it has some defense and some offense. So the first thing we're seeing here is that it's going to give some AoE barrier, AoE light aura. And then it's going to give us a buff that is basically a charge up counter for this explosion that happens at the end. So we see the kind of this swirling aura. And this is going to
And Scion from League of Legends.
stack up anytime an enemy strikes you or anytime you strike an enemy. And that's going to increase the damage of this final explosion. And if you reach the stack cap, so it's like there's a maximum of 10 stacks. If you hit 10 enemies or get hit 10 times or a combination of any of those things, this big explosion at the end is also going to do some phase. Probably not super likely in a 1v1 situation. Guardian does have a lot of multi-hit skills, so it is definitely possible.
Oh, so the daze only happens if you have 10 stacks. If you don't have 10 stacks, it just does less damage, it sounds like?
But more expected that you're going to get that maximum value in like these situations where you are able to beat multiple enemies. But the baseline of the skill of that AoE barrier, AoE light aura, which will be relevant once we get into the trait line as well. Potentially really fun and powerful skill.
One thing to remember that was at the start of the feed was all recharges on skills were set to 0. That would change playstyle. Oh yeah, I mean that's why we were reading. I think most of these utilities have 30-second cooldown.
Last up, we have the piercing stance. This one.
Piercing stance. Enter a stance that causes you to deal more damage to crowd-controlled and immobilized enemies, then strike nearby enemies to daze them. 20-second cooldown. Does some damage. Damage increase 15%. Increase strike damage to crowd-controlled or immobilized enemies. 1.5 second daze. 248 radius.
It's going to be, again, a bit more offensive and a bit more crowd control focused. So we're going to see it's just a quick AoE daze, kind of lash out with this burst of weaponry. And the stance itself is going to be another damage bonus against crowd controlled or immobilized enemies. So we see, short duration daze, not going to give you as much opportunity to unleash like a huge burst of damage. Maybe your next skill is going to line up with this 1.5 second daze. Then obviously it's going to give you bonus damage off of any of the other crowd control you're going to be inflicting with the skills. And as usual, skills with or enemies with Defiance bars are always going to be susceptible to this, or always reward you with this bonus damage. Last up, we have Daring Advance. This is, I like to call this one kind of a loose
Daring Advance, the elite stance. Leap to an area, tethering nearby enemies and empowering allies. Tethered enemies are stunned if they move beyond the range threshold. It's like Magus Chains? Does damage. Range threshold is 300. Yo, they gotta stay in hugging range. Might, Fury, Luminary's Blessing, reduce incoming strike damage, heal when this expires, 6 seconds. 2 seconds stunned if they get too far away. 5 seconds they have to stay close to you, or else they get hit with a 2-second stun. It's a it's a light field and a leap finisher. So I'm wondering, does it do light field then leap into it, or does it leap into the area and then do a light field after the explosion at the end? Because it might be, for example, Blast Gyro is a fire field and a blast finisher, and it combos off of itself. This, depending on the order of the events, might combo off of itself or it might not.
Rotation of the stance skill type because it's more of a mobility skill. We're going to leap to an area, and it's not going to give you, in particular, a buff, but it's going to create this area of power that is arguably the stance, where this is going to be applying Might, Fury. It's going to be pulsing Luminary's Blessing as well, so we're going to see, like, make sure I'm not going to die when I do this, but we can see, like, as this buff gets reapplied, you're getting that healing pulse because it's anytime that it expires in any way, whether it is by timeout or by refresh. That's also relevant for the Shroud, because if you are using those skills back to back to back, you will get that refresh on Luminary's Blessing, which will trigger the healing. So this is a pretty powerful, area.
Someone said, how's the lamp involved at all? I think the main thing is just the, all the conjured weapons are, coming out of flames that are from the lamp.
A lot of defense and offense attached to here. We're also going to see that if we leap in and we strike enemies, if it's going to do a tether on these enemies, that it's a little different from the DH tether or the Spellbreaker tether. This one is going to be just a stun if you get too far away, but the range threshold is a little bit shorter.
Okay, so the Spellbreaker tether, if you get too far away, you get pulled into the warrior. This one doesn't pull you, but it stuns you.
The idea is that the stun is a little bit harder to avoid, but it's not quite as powerful as getting pulled back, and it will again set up some of your skills that care about striking crowd-controlled bows. And I'm just going to use the skill a few times because the art is fantastic. I love this area. It's like the arena of
I like
weapons.
It too. Looks good.
You are free. It's not a ring of warding naturally. If you have the tether attached, you can just walk out of it. You might get stunned, but it looks very cool, very threatening. And it's also light field, which is cool because you can get some light aura. We also have the light field on the staff skill, radiant staff skill. Light aura will be relevant as we talk about the traits here in just a second, but I'm going to take a quick break for water. We see some nice temporary icons, blast from the past. These are not quite...
Okay, so there's some placeholder icons so on that bottom row there.
For anyone who remembers back in the day.
So every single trade icon down there is a placeholder.
All right, let's talk about some traits. So as with all the elite specs, this is just kind of the minor trait that explains the progression mechanics and all those things.
Okay, so it just says harness light and flame to bolster yourself and allies or disrupt your enemies. Gain access to radiant shroud and stance skills.
But starting with the trait that actually do things, we've kind of...
All right, Luminary's Blessing. Let's see, Light's Gift. Gain Vitality. Grant Luminary's Blessing to allies when you equip a radiant weapon. Gives you 180 Vitality, and the Blessing reduces incoming strike damage by 10%. Heal when this expires. That's crazy. Okay, so real quick, Protection. Reduces incoming damage by 33%, I think. Some classes have traits that make this even higher, but we are used to, at pretty much all times, when we're in PvE in group situation, taking 2/3 of the damage that the game, throws at us, right? The game throws 1,000 damage at you, you're taking 666 because of prot most of the time you're in a group. This is 10% damage reduction. So instead of taking, you know, 33%, you'd be taking 43% less. Unless it's multiplicative. I'm not sure if it's multiplicative or if it's additive. But the point is, like, every additional damage reduction that you are getting stacked on you, like Dwarf Stance from Revenant, for example, is very noticeable. Because, you know, after prot, you're just, you know, shredding that incoming damage even more. So that little 10% there is actually quite nice. It's one of the reasons the take 10% less damage food buff is so popular, for the same reason. That's actually a really good passive.
Seeing both of these already from using the Shroud skills. Light's Gift is going to be a little bit of extra vitality buff, and then this...
Like, I, as a support enjoyer, I'm more excited seeing that passive than any of the weapons they just showed. Not that they were bad, but I'm just like, wow, that's nice.
It's going to be the source of Luminary's Blessing. Every time you equip a Radiant weapon, it will do this to allies in the area. This duration is going to be a little bit shorter in competitive modes. Here we see, you know, some of these tuning paths. Right now it's 6 seconds. It's going to be about 3 seconds in competitive modes. But again, the idea is you get this kind of short duration of strike damage reduction, and then when that ends, it's going to give you a little bit of healing. That's obviously true for all of the allies that you affect with it as well. And then we see the bonuses.
Okay, Radiant Armaments. Gain a bonus based on your equipped Radiant weapon. The bonus lingers for a period of time after exiting Shroud. Hammer deals increased strike damage to controlled and immobilized foes. Sorry, I'm trying to... I think that's Staff. Plus 15% healing increase to others. That has to be Staff. Sword, plus 33% to movement speed. Okay, usually movement speed effects do not stack. It just uses the best one you've got. So if you've got Swiftness... This is the equivalent of Swiftness. So if you've already got Swiftness, it does nothing. But if you don't have it, it's basically Swiftness that cannot be removed or corrupted or boon ripped. So that has strengths in some, you know, if you're in PvP, no one can remove that from you until it runs out on its own. But if you have super speed, it just overwrites it. You know, you're not going to get super speed plus this. Radiant Armament Shield reduces incoming strike damage from nearby enemies. It doesn't say by how much. Is that the same tooltip as the last one they showed? No, that's different. Okay, so tooltip incomplete. The shield one doesn't say how much it reduces the strike damage by.
Here from Radiant Armaments, every time you, or while you have an equipped Radiant weapon, you're gonna get a passive bonus based off which weapon you equip that will linger for a little bit of time after exiting Shroud. So we see again here the Hammer, bonus damage against crowd controlled and immobilized foes, Staff giving you that increased outgoing healing, Sword with the increased movement speed, and Shield giving you that incoming strike damage reduction against nearby enemies. Moving into the adept traits, we have Shimmering Stances. You're going to have the Stance trait for the spec.
Stances grant protection to affected allies and blind affected enemies.
So we see some stances that affect allies, some that affect enemies. So stances that affect allies will also get protection bonus here, and stances that affect enemies will inflict blind. Some of the stances do both, so you will get kind of both of these bonuses attached to those stances. Pretty powerful trait, assuming you have like a decent number of stances on your bar. Next up.
Gain Light Aura when you use a healing skill. Light Aura for seconds, minus 10% increased condition damage. Let's see. Bish says, I don't get the healing stuff when it barely heals. Does the AA and Shroud heal? It has a few combinations of utilities on the bar that can do healing, as well as whenever you use the staff, when you hit F4 and you go into, what's it called? Luminary Shroud, and then you use the staff, that does healing. And then keep in mind, you also still have access to your 2 weapons from, you know, base Guardian. So, like, you could have the support staff on your bar from that as well, and you know, so on and so on.
We have Shining Restoration. This is kind of the first of the middle row of traits that are going to be Light Aura adjacent. And so here, this one's pretty straightforward. When you use a healing skill, get an extra Light Aura. Light Aura in itself, you know, increased Condi damage reduction. Not the most exciting, but not too weak, and we're going to see a lot of Light Aura synergy as we move down the trait line.
Persistent Blessing. Refresh the duration of your Luminary's Blessing and trigger its healing when you exit Shroud.
Next up, we have Persistent Blessing. This is going to give you a quick refresh of Luminary's Blessing when you exit Shroud. So, you know, go in, use all the weapons that you want to, and then as you're exiting Shroud, you're just going to get a nice little refresh on that duration of that damage reduction and get an extra healing trigger as well. So more of a defensive trait if you don't have a bunch of stances equipped for Shimmering Stances. Next up, we have Steadfast Recovery. This is a personal sustain trait. It's going to give you a pulsing health regen if you have protection or resolution. Starts off with a smaller number than other things that we've seen, like Rugged Growth, for example.
Harbinger and Soul Beast both have something similar to this.
Because it is going to count twice if you have both of these.
The other people as well.
I get this 120 heal pulse that obviously scales with healing power and all that jazz. But if I have prot and resolution, then I'm going to get twice as much healing every pulse. Obviously vulnerable to wound removal, but if you are maintaining protection and resolution, you can potentially get a lot of sustain from this trait.
Purging Light, remove Condis from nearby allies when you grant yourself Light Aura. And we've already seen a few skills in this guy's kit that can grant Light Aura.
Next up, you have Purging Light. Every time that you apply a Light Aura to yourself, you're going to do an AoE condition rule for you and your allies. We're still trying to find the right balance on this one. If one is enough with kind of the amount of Light Aura that's added to this spec. Obviously, Core Guardian has a lot of Light Aura sources as well. But now we're adding like more Light Fields, more Elite Finishers, a lot of extra triggers of Light Aura. So this might not be strong enough at 1. It could be 2, or maybe it could be 2 for yourself, 1 for allies. You know, there's a lot of knobs here that we can balance this trait with. But the idea is grant Light Aura, remove conditions from allies. And last up, we have kind of more a damage-focused trait here. This is going to be Empowered Armaments. So every time that you equip a Radiant weapon, it's going to give you kind of this duration stacking damage buff that we've seen on a number of specs.
So gain increased strike damage when you equip a Radiant weapon. For 6 seconds, it gives you 15% more damage. The max duration of this buff is 20 seconds. So if you just cycled through 4 of the Radiant weapons and then put the whole kit away, you would have 20 seconds of this buff. But for every Radiant weapon you cycle through, you increase the cooldown of it. So I don't know if you could have this out 100% of the time. Maybe Snowcrow's nerds could, and I say that in a fond way, could find some way of doing it. Maybe with Alacrity or something.
Every time that you use a Radiant weapon, you'll get additional duration of this. So this is another incentive to use more weapons each time that you go into Shroud. Obviously, Hammer is going to be the main damage focus. Staff is going to give you that symbol, which will be relevant for symbol traits, and also be a reasonable amount of damage once we get the number right. And Sword's obviously going to have a decent amount of damage attached to it as well. So there is already some incentives to use more weapons, but here's another incentive to use more weapons, is to get more damage. I'm going to start in the center. That seems to be a trend for the stream, starting with the middle.
Sovereign of Light. Your Light Aura detonates, damaging nearby foes and healing nearby allies. Again, reminded of Scion. Let's see, does damage, does healing, does resolution, 5 targets, 300 radius. Gain Light Aura when entering Radiant Shroud. Luminary skills detonate Light Aura, damaging enemies and healing allies.
Grandmaster Major trait. This is the Sovereign of Light. It's kind of a play on the King of Fire's trait that Berserker has in name and in functionality. So we're going to see another Light Aura trigger here that if I have this trait equipped, when I enter Shroud, I'm going to get a Light Aura. And then all of your Luminary skills, so that will be Radiant Shroud skills and Stance skills, will detonate that Light Aura, and that's going to do some AoE damage, it's going to do AoE healing, and it's going to give some AoE resolution as well. We can see we pop in, use a Hammer skill. We're going to get a little bit of a Light Aura explosion there. And, it's going to be hopefully a reasonable amount of damage, reasonable amount of healing. Resolution, pretty relevant for all the Guardian traits that love resolution. So an interesting trait if you really want to lean into like that, kind of like a middle ground bruisery playstyle. We're going to have some damage, some defense, and some support. Potentially an interesting trait selection. If you're going to be more of that boon support, then Illuminating Inspiration is going to be the trait.
Alacrity. Grant boons to nearby allies when you use a Virtue skill. Reduce the recharge of Virtue skills when you equip a Radiant weapon. Baseline Alacrity application is 5.5 seconds. So we're looking at the possibility of Heal Alac Luminary and DPS Alac Luminary.
You want to take, here we see, grant boost to nearby allies when you use a Virtue skill, and then reduce the recharge of your Virtue skills when you equip a Radiant weapon. So this obviously is going to be all of your Virtue skills granting Alacrity in PvE, and it's going to be something a little bit different in competitive modes. But then you can go into Shroud and use some Radiant weapons, get some cooldown reduction, and that's going to then give you access to like more boons. And reducing the recharge time of your virtues is even better when you have other traits that care about virtues, say from the virtue straight line, potentially a really strong trait for like those supportive guardians that, that's more indomitable courage procs, more absolute resolve procs, more of the just all the boons, all the triggers from virtue traits if you have this trait equipped and utilize all of the skills in your shroud. And last up, we have kind of the flip of the alternative to recharging your virtues by using your weapon skills. Now you're going to recharge your weapon skills by using your virtues, and this one's intended to be a bit more.
Just like, hey, is it bedtime? You just visiting. Okay.
Offensive focused. Obviously recharging staff is going to be good for support builds, but you're going to lose access to some of those boons and some of those.
So Master at Arms reads, using a Virtue skill recharges Radiant weapon skills. Justice recharges Hammer. Resolve recharges Staff. Courage recharges Sword and Shield by 100%.
Extra virtue triggers. This is intended to be more like a bursty trait where using virtues are going to give you a full recharge of the Radiant weapon skill. So here we see that if you use Justice, that's going to fully recharge your Hammer. So I can go in, use Hammer, use Justice, use Hammer again, and that's not going to. The cooldown is still going to be based off each unique weapon that you use. So if I go in and I use Hammer twice, or even 3 times if I use, say, Renewed Focus and recharge my Justice and then do it all again, that's still only going to count as one weapon used for the sake of the cooldown reduction. But you can see that we can get some pretty bursty moments. We go in, use all these skills, recharge them all with the virtues, and then, we can do it all again with Renewed Focus if we really want to. So you are the Master at Arms. You get to use all the weapons really as much as you want. Well, not as much as you want, but significantly more than builds with different traits. And, pretty fun to play with, and potentially very powerful DPS trait. So I think I got through everything, so we're just going to do some hovering of things for just a minute here. We'll go over all the traits again, and then over all of the skills again. What do you think about Luminary, Taylor?
While you're doing that, question, what roles do you think, the spec will see in the game? Like, how would it play in PvE or maybe Worldy World?
Yeah, so it's definitely gonna have access to alacrity. So we do expect, especially a DPS alac build to be relevant for PvE. Obviously, the pure damage build for sure. I think we definitely want to see like some more of a supportive role as well. It might not quite reach the level of like a pure healer, but we see like all the boon access that it has access to, a lot of stability, a lot of protection, a lot of these like core defensive boons. So it might not be like as much of a pure healer. Obviously, you can still spec into like as much of a healer as you want with your other traits and your weapon selections and your skill selections. It might not reach the level of some other support builds, but it is going to be like a decent middle ground of like great boon access, good damage, more that like bruisery playstyle, and then a lot of powerful defensive boons.
Dude, if you just had one of these in your group that's just like pure DPS, but they still provide that whole group takes 10% less damage thing, assuming that was whole group and not just self only, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I think people have been asking for a long time. A lot of Guardian specs take Guardian a different way, but I think kind of a more traditional, stalwart figure with a sword and the shield hasn't really been represented as much as people would like for Guardian. So I think, the spec trying to...
Where are you watching this VOD? It's from their Twitch channel. I'll drop a link in the chat if you want to see it.
Step in those shoes, correct?
Definitely. We had to shroud a bunch of times because keep expiring.
All right, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. He's just hovering over icons so people can take screenshots.
Decided to show it.
All right, I'm gonna...
background of blog post, part of Archer character post spec, so Ranger is kind of that for them. But with marksmanship, new weapon called the Cyclone Bow. So if you...
Okay, so we're talking about Ranger now.
The Galeshot, it is kind of an Archer spec. You're going to get access to this new weapon called the Cyclone Bow. I think talk about design goals. Part of Ranger's identity is definitely being a bow user. With marksmanship, I think a lot of people, when they first start playing the game, some people like to gravitate towards the Archer characters, and so Ranger is kind of that for them. But then when they got to Elite specs, there wasn't really one that elevated that fantasy. So that's what the Galeshot's trying to do, is kind of be that signpost spec for if you really like playing Archers in games. There's a lot of Archers in our game, but Galeshot is like the one that's highly focused on that fantasy. So, part of the Tyrian Alliance, the Tengu are teaching Rangers how to control wind magic.
Okay, so I just want to point something out. And again, this isn't like a huge complaint. I think this is like fair. Do you see right here? Look at the size of that. This is clearly something new for Galeshot. I'm guessing these are the feather ammunition, and I'm guessing F5 goes into the Galeshot thing, right? Look at the size of this compared to that teeny tiny little bar that the Luminary had, right? I'm just saying I would like to see something like this for Luminary. That's it. Just something that size where I'm not, like that.
It can be even better with their bow. So you're going to see a lot of mix of like the archery, the wind magic, and some bird aesthetics, because that's always fun. So that's kind of like the initial idea and why we decided to go with the Galeshot. So now we're in game, we're going to talk about what it is. I think when you first look at the UI, you can see a new F5 skill where you go into the bow and see you have these feathers that are your arrows. These are kind of going to be your resource for the spec. Continuing with the UI, when Cal will use the skill, you see it takes an arrow, and you have a meter where you can see the time until your next arrow. So, you're not guessing, you have the recharge there. And another thing you can notice is that Cal doesn't have no recharge on, but the bow doesn't have a recharge. The bow is something that you can always have the option to go into. This is something that we felt was important with the Archer Fantasy, is the ability to always have something to do at range. So the auto attack also doesn't cost any of the arrows. So wherever you are, you're able to auto attack with the bow. Obviously, it's very strong. Competitive mode is going to keep that number probably low, but in like instant PvE fights, the boss jumps away, you always have the option to swap to your bow. And that's something that's just one thing the spec brings that's kind of different from if we just made, a normal weapon that's gated by weapon swap, is that, you could have a longbow, but even there are times where you swap to your other weapon set that you don't have anything to do at range, so that's kind of a gap that the spec is hoping to fill.
It's okay, because you should just swap your short bow from your long bow, and then make sure you have bear pets as well. That's the key.
And then,
I get the joke. Right now, he is bear, bow, in this moment.
So going on to like kind of like the mechanics of the bow is that as you see Cal use skills, he'll get this buff on his bar.
Are you watching 2x? I'm watching it 50% faster right now.
That's called Wind Force. Wind Force is kind of, you build stacks of it up to your payoff. When you hit 5 Wind Force, you'll unlock what we call the finale skill Hawkeye. That's intended to do a lot of damage. And
shoot a wind arrow. Hawkeye, release a hail of arrows toward your target and enemies nearby them. Does damage AoE and 3 seconds of super speed, 1500 range. So it's got longbow range.
Hope for you to cycle through your skills. It plays a lot like a...
So you're watching with quickness? Yes. Yeah, you're seeing it with quickness right now.
Kit, and we've seen through a lot of gameplay, especially like Engineer and sometimes Firebrand, with these like no cooldown ability of damage and hope for you to cycle through your skills. It plays a lot like a kit, and we've seen through a lot of gameplay, especially like Engineer and sometimes Firebrand with these.
It's very similar to some of the untamed ambushes.
The optimal play style is to go and press the good button, then leave. We wanted the Cyclone Bow to have more interactive play than that. So that's what Hawkeye's intended for. You want to like wait for your cooldowns, wait for enough arrows to go into this kit to get that big payoff, but you always have the option to, you know, go into the kit if you need to use that evade backwards, or you just want to auto attack some. Maybe you have enough arrows that you can do a few blusters before you go back to your weapon. So it's trying to aim to be fluid and always have options to, you know, support this range playstyle no matter what's happening around you.
All right.
So
Talk through the skills.
Talk about the actual skills.
What is Bluster that you just mentioned?
Bluster is the 2 skill. This is kind of your bread and butter skill. Has a really low cooldown, costs 1 arrow, so you're going to be weaving it in a lot. You know,
Feather. Cost 1 feather.
you know, just quick charge up, then quick burst. Pretty simple. You know, nothing too
Wait, it even says on the tooltip it costs an arrow. Okay, make up your mind. Which is it?
crazy about it. Then we go to the 3 skill. This is going to be Fleeting Zephyr, your defensive.
Jump back, release a blast of wind that destroys incoming projectiles. It's literally shortbow 3. Okay. Shortbow 3, for those who don't play Ranger, shortbow 3 is you jump back, you fire a shot forward, and you evade while jumping back. This is the exact same thing. You jump backward, fire a shot forward, you're evading during the jump back, but it also destroys projectiles, which doesn't really matter because you're evading backward anyway.
You know, wanted to make sure the weapon has at least like 1 defensive in its kit. So you're going to do a leap back and evade. That's always useful. But you're also going to release a gust of wind, and that wind is going to be a pretty big projectile destruction. Part of being good at range is being able to trade in range. So if there's another person that's shooting at you with a projectile, you have the ability to use that to stop a pretty big important like incoming attack, and also use it to protect your allies if you see a lot of projectiles incoming.
So CMC just did a command to make one of the golems fire at him, and he kept trying to destroy the projectiles, but he kept missing the timing, and he got hit by all of them.
The next skill is going to be Quarry's Peril. This is going to be a ground target. You shoot arrows up, and then after a delay, they rain down, and it's going to immobilize people.
Okay, so it's caffeine-free barrage.
It's going to do some okay damage, but hoping the immobilize is the main aspect, so kind of lead it into your other skills.
Okay.
You know, you can Quarry's Peril to hit them with a
immobilize.
Bluster, or when we get into the 5 skill, also use that.
Arrow cost
into some
2.
ranged poke that is not affected by projectile denial, because that's like a big part of Worthy World that we know, so we want to make sure they have ways to interact that aren't just through normal projectiles.
Did he say if Alacrity helps the recharge time of arrows? Like, I know Alacrity doesn't help thieves that much because it doesn't make their initiative charge faster. Have they mentioned if Alacrity affects, like, feather charge time or arrow charge time? They're not being consistent with that. It bugs me. Supersonic arrow. Supercharge an arrow with wind magic and then launch it at incredible speed. The skill grants additional wind force.
And then we can go on to the 5 skill, which is like kind of another capstone skill. Supersonic Arrow. It's going to be very strong. It's going to take a lot of arrows, but hopefully worth the payoff. You're going to stand still in channel and then shoot a really fast arrow. I think I set this projectile to some insane number. It's almost instant, basically. It's going to do pretty heavy damage, CC, unblockable pierce. It's a very good skill, and one that if you're fighting a Galeshot, you want to definitely see coming and evade. There's also something that you can line up with Quarry's Peril and then use the Supersonic Arrow. And part of the payoff for being such a high arrow cost is that it's also going to give you 2 of those wind force. So you can get to your Hawkeye even faster if you choose to use it. Then, you know,
So the projectile speed is almost instant. So the tell on it in PvP would be when he leaps in the air and does that, you know, big charge up thing. So if you see the guy leap in the air, you dodge roll.
just talk about Hawkeye. It's, you know, intended to be a pretty high damaging skill to pay off for using all these weapons or all these skills while you're in the kit. And its functionality is basically you're going to use it on a target, it's going to lock onto that target, and then shoot 5 arrows at them, and then it's going to look at if there's any nearby enemies to them and shoot 3 arrows to them. So it's potentially a lot of arrows if you have a lot of people near them, kind of like a cleave arrow ability. So it's kind of like the core gameplay loop: go in, use your arrows, come out, and you know, as we talked about in the blog post, mobility and you know, swiftness, being mobile and controlling. The battlefield is also part of the spec, and that's going to come through more of the utility.
So go into stealth before using it? I mean, you could. Just with the Jaguar pet now, you know, these days, it can just hit F2 and go invisible.
So we can get into those. The utilities are going to be squalls, which are basically small bursts of wind.
Squalls? The new line of skills are squalls. Okay. Soothing Breeze. Call upon a gentle wind to heal and grant super speed to you and your pet. 4 seconds of super speed, heal, and 2 conditions removed.
Magic that are kind of like cantrips.
Small
but
wind magic? Yeah, no, I know what it is. I know what it is. I'm
Exist
just
in Ranger,
surprised.
so these are windy, small wind magic effects. The heal is going to be pretty simple. You're going to heal yourself and give yourself super speed and cleanse some conditions. It's a very basic, you know, heal, but does what you want. There'll be a couple super...
Honestly, if it has condition cleanse baked into it by default, that's pretty solid. Troll Unguent. We heal as 1. Do not have cleansing baked in by default. Healing Spring does, but you have to stay in one area for a few seconds. So if it's got the a heal and condition removal, you know, baseline, and then the super speed too, that's not bad.
Super speed tie-ins when we get into the traits, so that's pretty good. But it's just, you know, good value, what you want from your heal. We probably have seen this, but I want to make sure people know that there's no weapon restriction on Galeshot. You know, the F3 is just like an addition, so you're gonna have 2 weapons normally plus the bow. There's no
What? F3 is pet back off. What did you, wait, hold on. Did I hear that right?
there's no weapon restriction on Galeshot. You know, the F3 is just like an addition, so you're gonna have 2 weapons normally plus the bow. There's no locking your skills. So now, just wanted to make sure.
I guess he meant F5.
Because I saw, you know, some confusion over that. So then we can go into the more utilities. There's kind of like 2 offensive ones, 2 defensive ones. We can talk about the offensive.
Piercing Gales. Squall, conjure a barrage of wind to cut through your target. Deal increased damage against vulnerable foes. The wind flies faster when you have swiftness or super speed. That's a neat interaction. Does damage. Damage increase per stack of vulnerability. Okay, so this skill double dips from vulnerability. Number of targets 5. Velocity increase 100%, I guess, if you have swiftness or super speed. And pierces.
The first one is Piercing Gales. It's going to be pretty simple, just damaging abilities that you want to fit into like a rotation in PvE or use your additional poke. You're going to shoot 5 projectiles that pierce, kind of like in a pattern to make an X formation that I think looks pretty cool. And as it says, it's going to pierce. These projectiles inflict vulnerability, and then its baseline going to get additional damage increase from vulnerability. So if someone has 10 stacks, you're going to get a 10% bonus from vulnerability, but also deal an additional 20% damage. And then... So
in PvE, you might have this on your bar if it's a DPS increase, and then you just hit it whenever it lights up. In PvP... Talking from experience, like I love using like the Viper's Nest and the other like trap skills, but devoting a utility slot to a damage dealing skill in PvP is very rough when you could instead bring 3 stun breaks or something like that. So I'm not sure how much mileage this will get in PvP unless it could set up some like really sick burst combo or something.
Another tweak to the skill is that it's going to fly faster, the arrow or the wind magic projectiles, if you yourself have swiftness or super speed. So it's going to be kind of trading with someone if they know the timing for it, and kind of throw in a bit of a tweak, give yourself some swiftness, and the projectile to come at them a bit faster, so they have to react differently. And then the second utility that's going to be offensive is called Mistral. This skill is intended to be a payoff for having a lot of projectiles, using things like longbow, using like axe 2. You're going to create a screen of freezing wind.
Summon a current of chilling northern air. Projectiles that pass through the current become frozen, chilling and damaging, dealing additional damage to enemies. You know what? When he summoned that, I thought it was going to be a projectile block. But according to this, it's not. It's a projectile boost. Okay.
And then as you shoot projectiles through the screen, they'll get frozen, which will chill the enemy they hit and deal additional damage. So this has the potential to do a lot of additional procs of that damage and chill.
Does it have an ICD? It doesn't say it has an internal cooldown. Does it affect allies?
Not that many, so you really need to plan around when you're going to use the screen. You know, put it up right before you're going to Hawkeye, use those Piercing Gales through it. You know, if you rapid fire it, it's going to be, you know, plus 10 extra procs. So this is a way to encourage, you know, some more bow usage in the elite specialization outside of like just having the normal Cyclone bow.
Also works with any projectile skill, right? I can use my axe and throw some axes through it.
Yep. Then we can move on to the defensive utilities. The first one is going to be Wind Shear. This is just a quick knockback around you, a swell of wind.
Wind swells around you, knocking back nearby enemies and reflecting incoming projectiles. Yeah, but it's only reflect for like a fraction of a second, right? That's how these usually work. Breaks, stun, reflect missiles, knockback.
It's going to, like I said, knock back enemies, stun break you, and then it has a very short projectile reflex. So if you see a pretty important one coming, again, having that, you know, edge over range trades, you can reflect that back at people.
Yeah, so it's not going to let you fill the role in a group that needs feedback or fire and bubble.
Then the last skill is going to be Whirlwind. This is going to be a completely mobility-focused skill. It's ground targeted. You're going to leap through a whirlwind, evading while you're leaping, and then grant yourself a burst of super speed. It's going to be important, you know, if you're a long-range character, you want to position yourself well in fights.
Launch yourself forward with powerful gust of wind. So it's like a jump. It's an evade. It has 2 charges. That's always fun. And gives 3 seconds of super speed after you leap. So I'm wondering, is it just forward, or can you use this to like go up a platform?
It's going to be an important tool for that.
I'm guessing it's just
quick
forward.
Burst, movement speed, sort of aid. Get yourself where you need to be to, you know, be in the best position in fights. And then, you know, we can get on to the elite skill, Perfect Storm.
Perfect Storm. Release a massive tornado, launching enemies it strikes as it travels. When the tornado reaches its destination, it will persist for a period, dealing damage to enemies inside of it. Launching enemies it strikes as it travels. When the tornado reaches destination, it will persist for a period, damage inside it. Okay.
You're going to
Let's
charge
see
up,
it.
throw a tornado in a direction, and then where that tornado lands, it'll grow larger and kind of deal taking damage for while it's there. So it's a DPS skill. And then when you throw the tornado, it'll launch people along with it. And kind of the special part about the skill is that the launch is variable. It will launch them towards where you targeted the tornado to land. So you can target it right in front of you, and if you launch an enemy, they'll launch just in place right in front of you. But if you
That's pretty cool. Like, it pushed them all into it at the end.
target it all the way out, the tornado will kind of carry them with you and go a really long launch. And then the end goal is that they'll always end where the tornado ends, so you can get that taking damage on them. All right, so let me move on to the traits.
Hold on, I want to see a mouse
But
over the
variable
tooltip again.
Damage for while it's there. So you're
Duration is 6 seconds. Maximum launch distance 900 up to 5 targets. Okay. Stationary tornado damage hits 12 times for up to 5,400 base. That's a pretty well damaging elite, especially if like you can what was it? The wind bow. One of its skills was like it was like God. It was Barrage from Timu. It immobilized. So like if you knock them back with a tornado, hit them with that range to immobilize so that they're stuck in it for a few seconds.
going to charge target and go. All right, so let me move on to the traits.
All right, traits.
Yep. All right, starting with the miners.
Mastery of Tengu Wind Magic allows you to conjure the Cyclone Bow at will. Using arrow-consuming skills grants Wind Force. After you've reached the Wind Force threshold, you're able to use Hawkeye. Gain access to Squalls. Using the Cyclone Bow skill consumes arrows. You generate arrows every 5 seconds. So it takes 40 seconds to replenish your arrows from empty. Okay.
The first one, just as always, just explains the spec, the teaching of the Tango. You can see there that arrows have a 5-second recharge time to start. Obviously, things can be tweaked like that. It has a tooltip for Hawkeye. Then we can move on to the Master Miner, Bird of Prey. Strike damage increased while you have swiftness or super speed, and swiftness is more effective. So this is an or, so if you have
Strike damage increased when you have swiftness or super speed by 10%. Swiftness is more effective by 20%. Really? Swiftness is more effective by 20%. Does that mean that you run 50% faster, or is it just 20% of the original effectiveness on top of itself?
or super speed doesn't stack, but you're just going to get a damage bonus for the things, like using the heal, get the super speed, some swiftness procs, and the trade line, and just making yourself faster in general, as a spec wants to do.
The Sugar Rush Ranger.
Grandmaster Miner.
Your base movement speed is increased by 25%. Now, again, base movement speed increases and swiftness do not stack. But this means, what that means is even if you don't have swiftness, you run 25% faster than base. And swiftness is 33% faster than base. Super speed, Hawkeye grants super speed for 3 seconds.
Jetstream, it's just going to give you a base movement speed increase. We see a lot. Just even if you don't have swiftness or super speed, you're going to move faster. And then Hawkeye will grant you super speed. Sometimes you need to commit a lot to get that Hawkeye bonus, so this is going to make sure you get that Bird of Prey when you're using it, and also just a burst of movement speed to reposition after having to invest into it. We can move on to the Adapt tier. The first one is going to be Joy of Movement. This is just simple.
Squalls remove movement impairing conditions. I think the most noticeable thing that would be on is the heal. Because that means the heal would heal you, remove movement impairing conditions, then remove 2 more conditions, and give you super speed for 3 seconds.
Bonus onto your squalls. When you use them, you'll remove movement impairing conditions. Those can be pretty deadly, especially this spec when you get chilled or mobilized, pretty vulnerable. So you have this trait so that when you use your
yeah, and then the whirlwind, the leap away, you could use that too. It could break out of stuff too. That'd be good there too.
You can still get out, or just make sure you're staying on your feet with this trait. Then the next one's going to be Feel the Rush.
Movement skills grant you swiftness and endurance. Okay.
Which causes movement
So,
speed.
whirlwind.
Movement skills grant you swiftness and endurance. Movement skills really good with this elite spec. Sword, great sword. They're not ranged, but they have good gap creators, gap closers. So using this, you're gonna feel the wind as you rush through it. It's gonna give you some swiftness to stay up with mobility, and also a bit of endurance to keep you defensive if you're using those movement skills to stay in melee range, for example. Then last we have Wuthering Wind.
After using Bluster, your pet's next... was Bluster the 2? I think Bluster was Windbow 2. Your pet's next attack creates a damaging swell of wind around its target, which does 1,300 damage AoE up to 5 enemies. So basically is a direct damage buff to Airbow 2.
It's going to add an additional proc to when you bluster. Your pet's next attack is going to create just small damaging swell around the target. So it's just additional damage on the bluster. It is AoE damage. Give it a bit.
Okay, something I just noticed there. He fired that. The pet had to run over and attack, and then it did the wind around it, which means when you fire it, it gives the pet a buff, and then the pet consumes the buff when it next attacks. So there is at least a few seconds of leniency for if your pet's not in range and has to get in range. And I like that. That's good design.
Better cleave and have some interactions with your pet. Bluster has a couple other interactions in the specs. This trait has potential to proc a decent amount, and it's just some additional damage if you want that from this tier. We can move to the map.
Flock together. Avian pets have increased strength damage by 25% and health. 50% more health on birds? Okay, to be clear, birds are glass right now. Birds and cats have the lowest amount of health, I think, of any ranger pets. They're just baseline hit points is nothing. So if you're in PvP and you're playing a ranger and then you're like, you're downstate and you're like, oh, pet, use lick wounds, and your pet runs over to try to res you, and there's a weaver within the zip code, the pet will just evaporate. Like, it just dies because someone was near it and thought about it. Now this is going to help with that a little bit, but it's not going to make it tanky by any means because their toughness is still basically 0. But that's still a lot. Like 50% more health and 25% increased strike damage, and beast skills also give 6 seconds of quickness around the ranger. 20 second cooldown with concentration, 12 seconds of quickness. Would Alacrity affect the internal cooldown of a passive? I don't know if Alacrity would affect this or not. I'm trying to figure out in my head if it's possible to do 100% quickness uptime on your party while DPSing with this.
Master tier. And the first one we have Flock Together. This is the one we talked about in the blog post. Avian pets have increased strike damage and health, and beast skills grant quickness around.
You'll see another source of quickness
This is
soon?
a pet trait, like
Okay.
you see we've been adding to the core traits. This was actually the first pet trait. We really wanted birds to have a tie-in with this spec. It was very thematic, with the wind and the Tengu and all. And so we created this idea, and we were also be like, wait, this is cool for all the pets. So we kind of reverse added them to the core lines, but this one was actually the real one. So it's gonna, again, make your birds. It affects Phoenix, it affects Moas, things with feathers. It's gonna make them deal increased damage and also grant quickness around the ranger. This along with another Grandmaster trait, we're gonna try and have the spec.
Were the Tengu cool with that? Like when the Tengu were like, and that's how to harness the wind, and then the ranger was like, oh my god, this is gonna make my bird slave so much better. Were the Tengu like, you're what?
Do a quick DPS in PvE as additional role as to just normal DPS. So probably want this trait to make it easier. We can go on to, the next master tier. It's going to be Perilous Skies.
Pelt. Fire a volley of arrows into the air, damaging enemies where they land. Quarry's Peril is replaced by Pelt.
This is going to cause Quarry's Peril, that was the 4th skill in your Cyclone Bow, to be replaced by Pelt. Pelt is pretty similar to Quarry's Peril, except a couple of key differences. It's going to get 2 ammo, so you're going to be able to use it more. It's only going to cost 1 arrow, but it's going to eschew that immobilization. So basically, you can get more damage out of the slot, better poke, and
more damage, less ammo usage, but it doesn't immobilize.
Situations for Worldly World, where you're going to lose that powerful immobilize. So it's kind of a trade how you want that skill to be used. More uses, which means faster Hawkeyes as well. And again, Quarry's Peril have additional bonus, so this trait will get better. Let's talk about one of the Grandmaster traits. And the last master trait, last master trait is going to be
Fetch. Restore arrows when you swap pets. That's okay. I like the idea of that. You're telling your pet, you're like, bring me back those arrows. I need more arrows. I only brought 10.
Fetch. It's going to
only brought 8.
off pet swap. Pet swaps can be interesting traits for a burst of just a burst effect. It's going to give you 2 arrows back. Arrows normally have 5 seconds. So you have to wait a bit of time to get a full combo back, but you can take this trait if you want to speed that up a bit. Catch people.
So Beast Mastery trait line slightly increases or slightly reduces the cooldown of Pet Swap. So I wonder if Fetch is good enough to warrant bringing Beast Mastery with this for that.
Luck already just need some arrows like use these back or something. Pretty simple. Then we can get into the Grandmasters. And the
Cloudburst. Quarry's Peril and Supersonic Arrow reset the cooldown of Bluster. Now, if you take the trait to replace Quarry's Peril with Pelt, does Pelt reset the cooldown of Bluster? When you use Bluster or Hawkeye, grant boons to nearby allies. 6 seconds of quickness. Hawkeye duration 12 seconds. Skills and actions are faster. Talk to me. What is that?
These are all, the theme of the Grandmasters is they're all going to tweak how you play the bow, what its exact gameplay loop looks like. You can start with the middle again. Go for Gale Force. Gale Force is going to augment your Wind Force stat.
Wind Force grants stacking, increased movement, and damage. Oh, thank God. We've been looking for some movement in this build. When you use Hawkeye, convert these into stronger bonus for a duration. Wind Force gives 5% movement speed and 3% damage, up to 10 stacks. Gale Force gives 33% movement speed and 25% damage.
Which were the things that you built up so you can get Hawkeye. It's going to give them a small movement speed and damage increase bonus. And then when you use Hawkeye, it's going to convert these Wind Forces into a stronger bonus for a short period of time. So the goal here is that you kind of have a normal gameplay loop with your Cyclone Bow, and then after you finish it, you're going to get almost a Sikkim type bonus to go into like a weapon skill type burst. So you use this, and then you go do your Whirling Defense, go do like a Rapid Fire. It's just carrying that moment of power farther into your normal weapon skills. Then we can go to the top one. This is going to be Cloudburst, kind of where I was talking about some synergies between it and the other skills. Quarry's Peril and Supersonic Arrow, those are going to be the 4 and 5 skills, are going to reset the cooldown of Bluster. And then when you use Bluster or Hawkeye, you're going to give boons to nearby allies. These are quickness in PvE, it's swiftness and fury in the competitive modes. But basically, we want the value for there to be on the cooldown of Bluster. But it's going to change kind of the cadence. Where you use 2, then you use 4, 2 again, 5, 2. Kind of get a lot faster of a Hawkeye going. You don't have to wait for cooldowns longer, so it's going to kind of condense it. And then also be the option where you're supporting your allies. This will also work off the Perilous Skies. You're going to get 2 pelts, which is 2 recharges for your Blusters, which procs Wuthering Winds. So going like diagonally, got a lot of synergy in the line. Then we move on to the final Grandmaster trait. It's going to be Shrike. The goal with Shrike is it's just...
After a number of missile hits, release a volley of arrows at your target and gain an arrow. After a number of missile hits, release a volley of arrows at your target and gain an arrow. Missiles from this trait do not count toward its next trigger. Every 8 missile hits, you fire 3 Shrikes. Range 2,000. Arrows restored 1. So missile hits could just be like Longbow 2 rapid fire. It could be anything.
For people that want to stay in the bow as long as possible. It's going to trigger off of missile hits, and missiles are just like projectiles, from your bow, from your axes, what have you, things that fly through. Every time you hit someone, every 8 hits with a missile, you're going to shoot a volley of arrows, and also reach, store an arrow. It's basically as you're auto-attacking the bow, or you can swap to like a longbow, get a rapid fire. The whole goal here is that you have a lot of arrows so you can stay in the bow as long as possible for people that want to do that.
I recommend the win.
Yeah, I think little bonus. When you're using your pet Cal, does it feel a bit more responsive to you? Almost.
It kind of does.
Oh,
like...
okay. So Lead the Wind is a trait that makes your longbow arrows pierce. So his longbow arrows are going through these guys, and like every shot is doing like 3 hits, right? And then he does Rapid Fire, which fires like 8 shots in a row. So that's like 24 hits. So he procced Shrike 3 times and fired 9 extra arrows.
When you tell it to use an F2, it will do it immediately. Part of the spec and making sure things like flock together birds have long cast times. So has been a bit of an issue that for a while pet responsiveness wasn't great. You weren't able to interrupt their commands. We made sure that we went and fixed pet AI, that when you use a skill, your pet will obey you. So this applies to all ranger specs, untamed, druid, what have you. When you use an F2, your white tag will give you Aegis when you want it to. So we want to make sure that when the spec comes out and you're using those birds, they feel responsive like you would want them to.
So there's the thing with the birds, okay? So just TLDR for anyone not a ranger main that sees this and they're like, oh, I want to play ranger. Birds have 4 abilities. All the pets have 4 abilities. One is their basic attack, and then they got 3 more. The first of those 3 more is the F2, and you can tell it to do that when you want it to happen. Like, I want you to do this now. Of those remaining 2 abilities that the bird simply uses whenever it wants to, there's one called, I think it's Quickening Screech. And the bird basically is like, caw, caw, and it flies in a circle, and then after flying in a circle for like a second or 2, it pulses swiftness. Now, if you're running and you tell you're like, pet, give me swiftness, it's like, caw, caw, and you've already left the circle, and then it pulses swiftness and dies or catches up. So it not only is it like, 6 weeks shipping, but also in a PvE situation where you already have swiftness, you don't want it to do that, you can't stop it. So it'll be like, I attack, I stop attacking and fly in circles and caw, then I attack again. So it lowers its own damage by doing that animation. And so one of the only specs in the game right now that really benefits from the bird damage is Untamed, because their pet is more tamed, and they can turn off Quickening Screech. But if you're not untamed, you can't turn that off. So I'm curious how well the bird will perform for this guy.
There is some strange behavior when you are cheating and have no recharges, but I don't expect that anyone will run into that.
That covers it with the Galeshot if you want to hop over
Give me
tooltip to get it
the
before.
final tooltip pass. Yeah, so that's all of the elite specs we have for today. We'll probably be back next week with a few more.
We'll probably
But
be
you'll just
back.
have
So
to
chat,
stay
there's
tuned
no
to
guarantee you're going to hear about
learn
the
what
class
those
you
are.
care about next week.
Yep.
You might just decide not to.
You know, when the beta comes out, we're going to be looking for all the feedback you guys put out. We're going to have forum threads for each specialization as normal, looking at other avenues as well, other social media is going to read all you guys say. You know, the beta is for the feedback, what you guys like, what you guys don't like, number tuning, of course, the art, the audio, everything. So, you know, we're just as excited as you guys are for you guys to get your hands on these things.
Yeah, and I guess we can just
My post on the forums. I don't like that I'm getting a third bow.
reiterate once again, because it's true that obviously things are going to be a little bit unbalanced, most likely. You know, there's going to be things that need improvement, mechanics that are maybe a little crazier than they need to be and need to be kind of reined back in or changed. You know, we've definitely seen, even with like some of the past non-elite spec betas, where we've been able to make some pretty significant changes to things based off player feedback, based off the results of betas, where some things just aren't going to work, and that's not. It's not what we're going for, but it's not something that is really a surprise. Like we're going to be trying some cool stuff, and some of it's going to need to be adjusted between beta and launch, and that is entirely kind of what we're expecting to do already.
Saw someone ask this, the Galeshot bow will be available underwater. We actually have a harpoon gun version of it. Wanted to make sure, you know, all these spec mechanics will be available underwater.
Suck it, Mechanist.
So you can play them wherever. So that shouldn't be a worry.
The Cyclone harpoon gun.
Gale
Like,
harpoon gun.
maybe the water spout harpoon gun. I don't. It's available underwater and it looks.
It
cool,
works.
so all
It looks
matters.
cool. All right, we're almost done. Any final words, Taylor?
You know,
Read Ghosts of Ascalon.
read Ghost of Ascalon.
It's a good book.
I think.
I need to make some YouTube shorts based on it. I've done 4 of those like Did You Know lore shorts, and they've done really well. I think I might want to do one from Ghost of Ascalon talking about Almora's past. Dude, she is like heavy metal. Dude, she is hardcore. Like the more I learn about Almora's history, the more I'm like, damn, she deserved that song that Metal Legion made about her. Cause wow. Okay, let's do a quick recap. So my thoughts on Galeshot after seeing all this. It's kind of cool. I could tell it's going to be a menace in PvP. Okay, anyone who's ever done PvP or World v World, remember a time that a ranger hit you with like a Sikkim Soul Beast, and then he rapid fired you from like a mile out and just like filled you with arrows, and then you barely lived, and you're like, okay, do I try to run away or do I try to run at him and fight him? Now imagine that ranger is constantly running at 100% faster speed. This thing is going to be an absolute menace in picking people off in PvP and World v World in open areas. This thing is constantly at 50% bonus speed and sometimes at 100% bonus movement speed. It can give itself quickness and fill you full of arrows and lead from up to 2,000 range away with some of its skills. This is going to be an absolute nightmare for some people to deal with. In PvE, it's a DPS. And DPS, whether you play Reaper, Elementalist, Ranger, or Engineer, please know that to us supports, you all are just different colors. But you're all DPS. Some of you, the red ones, hit the floor more often. So it doesn't matter. Because you have a ranged weapon, that doesn't mean you'll get to stay at range unless you're in open world, in which case anything goes. In open world, anything's fine. But if you are in a group in PvE, you're typically stacked up so that you get the boons, or so that you give the boons, so that you give the heals or receive the heals. You're going to be stacked up, which means you're all going to be stacked up in melee most of the time. However, there are moments where you're like, you know, you got a red circle, you got to run it away from the group, and you can keep shooting your bow while you're running away from the group and then come back in after. You know, there will be moments. But for the most part, this doesn't suddenly mean that you're going to be standing, 30 feet behind the group, or 100 meters, whatever the EU translation of that is. So my own personal taste, this is just me. I wish we had gotten literally anything else. I'm not really hyped about getting a third bow, and its abilities are caffeine-free barrage, a literal copy of Short Bow 3, rapid fire ×2. And yeah, the bow skills to me are the most boring part. However, some of the utilities are pretty nice. The heal skill seems quite good. The whirlwind, where you can like leap and use it as a movement skill, is quite nice. I like the UI that they did right here. So it's like the size of the Druid Astral Power bar that I literally just mentioned when we were looking at Luminary. And I was like, man, I wish they'd given it a larger bar like they did Druid. And then they immediately showed this. And I was like, yeah, like that. So props to them for having a very visible UI. I think that looks good. I think some people would be really hyped. The people that like the Archer fantasy. As a pet class enjoyer, very curious to try out how well this thing works with the bird pets and see how effective they are. Because again, up until now, the only class that could effectively use a bird pet is Untamed, because they could turn off that one skill that sucks. This guy will not be able to turn that skill off. So, is the bird using the crap skill going to be made up for by the trait that gives it 25% more damage? I don't know. We'll see. They said they improved the AI for the pet's F2 skills. Quickening Screech is not an F2 skill. It's a different thing. It's one of the skills that the pet just uses on its own. So I do not know if their pet AI fix is going to affect Quickening Screech at all. So that's another thought that's in my head. I hope it does, because obviously that would be good. I do hope it does, but that's a little fear that I have. What else? I'm hoping that Alacrity will affect the generation rate of feathers in some way, because right now it takes 40 seconds to fill feathers from 0. That's a long time. So, right now, I mean, other than that, it's traits, right? So, like, if you drain your feathers out, and then you, like every 8 shots you do, you like replenish a feather, so you're either auto-attacking, maybe you swap to longbow and rapid fire or something like that, but you do something else to generate them. But I don't think Alacrity is going to affect feather generation, because it seems kind of like Thief Initiative. MOAs will be included as bird pets, though. True. Haven't done anything with MOAs in a long time. Once upon a time, Soul Beast would always be running around with red MOA. But the others, I haven't seen a lot of builds utilize, like the black MOA. Well, black MOA is from Guild Wars 1. Not everybody has that. But like the pink MOA, the white MOA, stuff like that. Haven't seen them get a lot of action lately. So they might be involved in this, yeah. Random thought. We don't know what the new ranger pets are going to be in the expansion. They need to add a penguin. That way, we have an underwater bird pet option for Gale Harpoon Gun. Just a random thought. So yeah, we need that. We need that. Flamingos. I mean, the MOAs are close enough to flamingos. They're fine. Yeah. So okay. So there will be some people that will absolutely love this, and you know what? I am happy for you that you're happy. In the same way that I'm happy that some other people were hype about fishing, and some people were hype about homesteads. This just isn't my thing. To me, this is too much of a copy of what we already had. But I know some people will be hype about that. I am not complaining. I saw a lot of people yelling at me on my last videos. I just want to say, I'm not complaining on the forums. I'm not asking them to change it. I just look at this and I go, I might main my Necro in the next expansion. I like Ritualist. And I did that in End of Dragons too. When Untamed first came out, I really didn't like it. Still don't like the green smog cloud. It grew on me later on, but when End of Dragons came out, I was like, I'm maining Mechanist. Mechanist looks hot. And then I played Mechanist through that whole expansion pack for like a year, and then I went back to Ranger after. So I might do that again on this one, just because this isn't my thing. And that's it. That's fine. We all have things we like and dislike, and that's okay. But yeah, I did like the Whirlwind. I do like the pet passive thing here. They made a nice UI for this. This thing, I think, is going to be a problem in PvP and Worldview World with the fact that it has got the range of Sikkim Sniper Longbow, and it also has, like, insane mobility. I think that will cause issues, and it wouldn't surprise me if it got some kind of nerf as a result of that. I don't know how they would handle that, but it wouldn't surprise me just based on what I've seen so far. I think that this thing could bully anyone who's caught on their own in Worldview World, except maybe a thief because they go invisible. Maybe. And that's a maybe. But I think anyone else would be able to you just absolutely get bullied by this. Okay, let's see if they say anything other juicy tidbits at the end.
The push beta is coming out soon. We'll probably reiterate that after the next stream, but keep your eyes out for that.
Yep, and of course keep your eyes out for additional elite spec information. Next week's going to be a pretty similar pattern where we're going to have that initial kind of reveal video and developer blog post, and then we'll be back with another live stream where we show off the next heavy armor profession, medium armor profession, and light armor profession. So you guys can do some math to determine how likely it is that your favorite profession will be revealed next week if it has not already been done.
It's 50-50.
As always, stay
I did the math for you.
Leave messages that the stream isn't as good without Roy on it.
Not as good without Roy. Roy's like on vacation or something, so we couldn't
He's
even like.
vacationing in Europe and having a good time, but
We'll see if we can't get Roy back to
Yep.
run some of these streams too. But yeah, that's all we have today. So thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you in the mists.
you in the mists.
Okay, I was waiting because I wasn't sure if they had any kind of teaser or sneak peek at the end, as they sometimes do, but it seems that that's not the case. And there's a picture of a script. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Oh my god, wall of text. Wait, Nog says, oh, the lady who's survived being branded by Crocodile killed. That's not related to this. Pantheon, Saving Paragon, and Ritualist for last week, I'm sure. Yeah, not sure. So, I very much thought... Wait, what? Oh, it's auto-playing an art show. We'll just pause it. I very much thought, based on that that one trailer, I guess, that they released. I don't know if trailer is the right word. Where they showed the Evoker and the Antiquarian and the... Or the Antiquary, sorry. I'm using the Darkest Dungeon terminology. What was the other one? Oh, the Bard. The Bard, Evoker, and the Antiquary they showed. And I think all of us are like, oh, these are the first three they're showcasing. And then they showed the Bard, the Luminary, and the Galeshot. I'm like, okay. So we know we've still got the Antiquary, the Evoker, the 99% chance it's Ritualist, the 99% chance it's Paragon, and we have no idea what Engineer is. What's the other one? Oh, Revenant. Engineer and Revenant. No freaking idea. I think Engineer was the one that was like the ball with the two lines around it. Like that, maybe they're splitting the atom. Nuclear physicist engineer. Return of the Muckenheimer. And then the Renegade was just like the jaw shield thing. I don't know what that is. The Demon Core engineer. Yeah. So those are big question marks. I'm not sure what those are. So that's all of it. That is all of it. So that is the Elite Specialization live stream for the Troubadour, Galeshot, and Luminary, and my own personal thoughts on them. Definitely want to try all of them out when they come out. I can already tell that I think I'll like some more than others, but definitely looking forward to trying all of them out and seeing what we think. And next, if we don't hear anything before then, this coming Wednesday will be the next sneak peek at 3 more of the remaining 6 classes in the form of a blog post that talks about a little bit about how they play, as well as one of those sneak peek trailers that just gives us a few, trickles of information. But that's all I got on this one. So as always, what did you guys think? If you've got any questions, problems, thoughts, concerns, or ideas, or you noticed anything? Sometimes they hide things in these trailers, like they'll use a weapon skin that's not released yet just to see if anybody spots it. I was looking for that kind of stuff. I didn't see anything, but that's not to mean that there's nothing there. But if you spotted anything in this, now that you've got the power to pause and rewind, stuff like that, let me know. I'm curious about it. Put it in the comment section down below. Or if you have any buildcraft ideas, like you see this and you're immediately like, oh my god, Galeshot would go so good with bleh, if you think anything like that, I'm curious to hear that too. So throw that in the comments section. I'll be happy to read it, and I will fight you there.